couple of questions. And I was gonna just say mum about what they were, but I couldn't. No, you have to try both. You have to have both.
All right, the City Council for the City of Rollingwood will come to order Wednesday, May 15th, 2024 at 7 p.m. We will start with roll call with Ms. Brown.
Brooke Brown?
Alec Robinson.
Kevin Glasheen.
Phil McDuffie.
Sarah Hudson.
Gavin Massigill being quorum present. We'll move on to public comment. Anyone here wishing to make comments on items not posted on the agenda? Have anyone? Moving right along, we'll move off public comment, move to public hearing. We do have one necessary public hearing. Agenda item number 2, public hearing, discussion, and possible action on a local amendment to the International Building Code establishing requirements of certificates of occupancy issued for a change in owner, tenant, or business name. And I will, this is an agenda item from last month that we discussed somewhat at length, and then it's back before you now to fulfill the obligation on the public hearing. I'll let Ms. Wayman lay it out for us.
Yes, in your packet is a draft ordinance that adds in this requirement for a CO for a change of tenant, owner, for commercial properties. This is just so that we know what is going in and out of our commercial district. We can confirm the use, make sure it's compatible with the zoning district. So this just adds in that requirement.
Thank you, Ms. Wayman. Questions, council?
I had one question.
Sure.
Clarification. If in a multi-tenant like office building, that like does this require like someone just renting an office as an individual to like, or is because like part of me is reading it, it seemed like it was just like okay, if the office building changes ownership or.
I do believe it would apply to a tenant. An example I can think of is if a restaurant tried to go into a different spot in a building, they do have to get a special exception for that and the entire, a special use permit for that, and that would be something that would need to get approved. So I believe it would apply for tenants, and we've had that when businesses just change names. It's really not there's not a huge process. We just make sure they've done their safety information basically with the fire department, so we just make sure they've had those inspections, and if nothing else has changed, that's really all we do is just require that they come in so we know that they're here. But it would apply to tenants. I don't know if Austin does that. I know that Buda did that, which is
Who did?
where Buda did
Oh.
it, which is where we got the suggestion from
I see.
Nikki.
It's really
Uh-huh.
just kind of a check the box thing, because we have had instances where we have a business change, and sometimes it does require additional action by the city. So if we don't know that we have a new business there, it makes it difficult.
I guess.
Yep.
I guess my only thought was like someone renting an office like as an individual, that just seems kind of like overkill. But
It does. It's tough to have a one size fits all, but we have no size that's fitting none currently. So
well, don't we have restaurant? Like a restaurant has to get a permit. I mean,
we had a restaurant start moving in. We didn't know that they were because they didn't have to check with us to begin with. So it was far worse for them when we had to say, hold up, you actually don't have the ability to do what you're trying to do because we didn't know that you were trying to open this business. That's really what started this discussion. So
Yeah, if there's not significant inside remodeling that would require them to come get a permit, we wouldn't know about it happening. So
okay.
Move to adopt.
we need to hold a public hearing.
Yeah, let me
We got a public hearing.
hold that thought. We're going to, so we opened,
Oh,
I opened the public hearing at 7:00. I'm opening the public hearing on agenda item number 2 at 7:04. Is there anyone wishing to testify on this item that we've just discussed? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing on agenda item number 2 at 7:04 p.m. And we are back in regular session, and now I recognize you for your motion.
Move to adopt.
You have a motion to adopt the recommendation for agenda item number 2. Do you have a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Mr. Glasheen, a second by Mr. McDuffie. All those in further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you, council. Moving on to the consent agenda.
And
Oh, I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Mayor?
Oh, I'm sorry. 1 second.
Okay.
While we're on this topic, please, I'm going to call up agenda item number 19, discussion and possible action on a resolution amending the city's fee schedule related to certificates of occupancy fees and to add a construction hour sign fee. This is a continuation of the issue that you just adopted in agenda item number 2, and Ms. Wayman will explain agenda item number 19.
Yes, so since that amendment was approved, we did not actually have commercial certificate of occupancy fees in our code. It also was a little unclear when the certificate of occupancy fees came into place, so we did some work to clarify that. A commercial certificate of occupancy, we only put it at $150. We don't see that there being a lot of staff or administrative time that goes into that. Residential temporary COs and COs are a little bit more work. They require us to go through and pull every inspection from usually the whole building process, and so that's why those are a little bit higher. And then additionally, we didn't have construction hours signs in our fee schedule, and that was something we realized. Our code says that you will come get a sign from us and we'll charge you for it, but we just didn't have a fee. So these are those metal construction hour signs that have to be kept at job sites. So we just added a fee for that here. And that's what this entire amendment does.
Any questions? Happy to have a motion.
Move to adopt.
You have a motion to,
the,
I'm sorry.
Resolution number 2024-05-15-19,
Yep.
amending the city's fee schedule.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown, a second by Ms. Hudson. Further discussion, council? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you, council. And now we will go back to the consent agenda. And Mr. Glasheen, did you have a question?
Well, I just saw that Melissa Morrow from the Parks Commission is here, and I know she was gonna address some things in the public comment section, and so I was wondering if we could either reopen that, or maybe she'd rather just address it when we get to the park issues.
Okay, I'll come back to that. Let's dispose of the consent agenda real quick.
Okay.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
You have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown, a second by Mr. McDuffie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you, council. I am happy to go back to public comment for anyone who's just shown up, and I'm not seeing anything, so do you have on items not on the agenda?
Some of them are and some of them are not. Our problem was that Parks Commission met yesterday, so we couldn't be on your agenda. So I was gonna give you an update on what we did.
Why
in
don't
public comment.
you come on up in public comment?
I'll do it in 3 minutes. That's
Oh. Speaking my love language.
All right, so the Parks Commission
You
met.
identify yourself. I know you, but the record
Oh,
doesn't.
I'm sorry. Melissa Morrow, 2502 Timberline Drive.
Thank you.
Also the chair of the Parks Commission. We met yesterday. Unfortunately, we weren't able to give you things for your packet, but there are a few things. We basically have prioritized projects for this next year. We have 5 main projects that we want to work on. The erosion area between the upper field house and the trail, which I think is being worked on and is at the engineers right now. Erosion near the lower park pavilion, which I believe Izzy is working on to have taken care of pretty quickly. The walking trail, that is one of your agenda items. I will just quickly speak. We did have a motion to table that rehab project because Mary Elizabeth has scheduled Tim Eichen, who has done extensive work on the Violet Crown Trail, to do a walkthrough. We are going to post a meeting of the entire Parks Commission next Friday, May 24th. So any of the Parks Commission members can attend it. It should be just like 15-20 minutes. We're going to walk it, and then he's going to give us a recommendation that we're hoping to bring to our June meeting then be able to propose something for you all. That's why that's why we made a motion to hold off on the demonstration project, because we'd hate to put in a demo area where he might have a different sort of recommendation. And then we also had a motion to have Mas Verde propose what kinds of trees and a number of trees. If you go into the Parks Commission packet, there's two areas. One, what I would call behind fields 3, 4, and 5, that area, and then along the eastern side of 3, 4, and 5, all the way up to almost to the front, areas for trees. Again, we're hoping that we'll get a recommendation from Mas Verde by our June meeting and be able to bring something to y'all in June.
Thank you.
Great update.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Appreciate it. Okay, with that, we will move on to the regular agenda. We will move to discussion, agenda item number 6, discussion and possible action regarding general obligation bond series 2024. I believe we have Mr. Gilly here. We've staff's prepared a one-pager for you. James, why don't you come on up, just in case? I'm not putting you on the spot, just be there in case, but, okay, Ms. Wayman, do you want to give us a brief reminder?
Yes, at the last meeting, council generally gave direction to U.S. Capital Advisors to move forward with a 20-year amortization for the $1.4 million for the rest of the water CIP projects. So that would be considered General Obligation Bond Series 2024. And so tonight, we're just looking for formal action on that amortization length. And of course, staff's recommendation is 20 years.
Okay, council, happy to have a motion, and then we can ask any questions, or we can ask questions and then have a motion.
I do have one or two questions.
Okay.
I looked at, James, thank you for being back. I looked at the schedules that have been revised since our last meeting, and I have a couple of questions with respect to numbers that changed. One of the numbers was and maybe I just need an explanation for this. On the second page of the presentation, it shows that on the left side column, it shows the INS rate to be .0951. And then on the right-hand side, under existing rate, it shows the 2024 INS tax rate at .0924. So is that the correct way to have that presented, or should, I know that the left-hand column is showing what our current total rate is, and the right-hand column, that the .0924, is that the correct rate to use there, or should it be the existing?
I believe if I know what you're referring to, that decimal 0924 for fiscal year 2025, that's a calculated
Okay.
tax rate based on the growth, assumed growth in assessed valuation and your existing debt.
Okay, all right. Well, what I saw was that the resulting increase is a little bit higher than what we saw at the last meeting.
Yes, that's mostly due to a change in the assessed valuation, the 2023 assessed valuation. We were using information from the appraisal district, and but Abel had informed me that in subsequent discussions, Abel informed us that it was actually reduced by,
Okay.
I think, approximately a little over 20 million. So
Yeah.
so that's
yeah.
the
So that's it?
that's right.
Okay.
And I suppose that that's the assessed valuation that the city would be using to set its tax rate. And so we had overstated the assessed valuation slightly, and so that kind of carries through.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Good question, Counselor. Any other questions? More questions? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I could be recognized?
Yes, ma'am.
I would move that the council adopt the 20-year amortization schedule for the proposed general obligation bond series 2024.
You have a motion, council. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown, a second by Ms. Hudson. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you, council. Check one thing. Do you need anything else from us?
No,
Do you have what you need to go to market?
we do.
Good luck at the market.
We'll do our best.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Do we need to adopt the schedule?
That's what I was just asking. I think this action you took was good, and the next time they'll see it is when?
When it goes to the bond sale, which is June
June 12th,
twelfth,
I believe.
the
And
date
then-
of our next council.
And then you'll bring it back for us to accept the bond
That's
sale.
correct. We will take competitive bids in the morning, finalize the debt service numbers, and present to council for consideration of the adoption of the bond ordinance.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Thanks for
you.
being here. Thank you, council. Moving on, moving off agenda item number 6 on to agenda item number 7. Presentation from K. Freeze and Associates to discuss a plan for action to address park drainage concerns. I believe we have A.B. here. We don't always get to see A.B. I get to see him more on Zoom than
Good.
he
good
probably
evening.
would like me.
AV, so yes, with K Freeze and record time.
We're
really,
ginning,
really
right?
good.
Yeah.
I do have a presentation prepared. I don't know
They're gonna
if
pull
we're
it
able to
for you,
pull it
yeah.
up. Okay. So, the purpose of today in this presentation is to provide an overview of the drainage issues associated with Rollingwood Park. Well, you can go to the next slide. We'll start with an overview of the location that we're looking at. And then we'll have some discussion about the understanding of the problems as we understand them today and see what else there may be. And then we'll talk about a path forward as far as costs and benefits for what maybe some approaches may be for moving forward. I think we're going to find that there's kind of two paths that we can take. One is going to be addressing more on the maintenance and operation side of things of the park and trying to address what we can as low cost and providing as immediate benefits as possible. The other option being something that's a lot more detailed in terms of analysis, and the type of projects that would be developed out of that would be more significant infrastructure projects that become more costly and with that a longer timeline. Okay, so the area that we're talking about is the area roughly in green, and this represents the open space area for the park and a little bit of extra, I think, common area over by City Hall. And called out on the map are a few areas that we know that have been discussed in the past about either flood hazards or erosion issues or concerns about the detention pond. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And the other thing to note on this exhibit is in the blue dashed lines, that's representing where flow tends to concentrate and travel. So I'll show that in kind of a few different ways so we can all kind of take a look at that. This is a contour map of the park. So in red, those represent the contours. The closer those contours are together, that means the steeper the terrain is. The high point in the park is roughly where the ball fields, the baseball fields are, and the flow travels in the direction of kind of where those black arrows are pointing. So there's a good amount of flow that drains to the north and to the east, and then we have flow that travels northward towards Pleasant Cove. We have flow that comes from roughly where the WAC is, that concentrates and then travels across a residential lot there at 6 Pleasant Cove. And then we have runoff that accumulates, south of Gentry Drive, and that water accumulates onto Nixon. That flow travels northward, and then it goes into the creek where you see between Nixon and Pleasant Cove. This is another illustration of the area that we're talking about, and this shows the accumulated flood depths from a model that we had previously done as part of the infrastructure improvement plan. So you see there's a large amount of flow that travels on Nixon, and then it goes into the creek system there as it approaches Pleasant Cove. And then you see another accumulation of runoff that comes from roughly where the WAC is, and then across one of the residential properties over in that side.
And
Yes.
WAC, when you say WAC, that's Western Hills Athletic Club.
Yes.
Okay, just to clarify.
Yes. I hope I'm speaking the lingo. And so starting from left to right, the areas that are aware of and that we've discussed is the detention pond there on the left side of the screen. There's runoff that accumulates from the parking area, and then it goes to that detention. What that looks like is on the top left photo. That's the pond, pretty shallow, not a whole lot of depth. And you see the two outlet structures there, kind of the middle left of the screen. And then we were fortunate to be able to walk the site a month ago when it was a light rain. So you can see runoff coming from the parking lot on the right side of the image. It comes down and goes into that pond. While we walked the site, we observed different conditions within the park, and so some of the things that we saw was like on the top right where we have some of these walking trails. There's a kind of nuisance flooding, accumulation of runoff there. Then on the bottom left, not a whole lot happening here. It's obviously a path that's traveled by foot, and with that there's no vegetation, and when there's runoff, that's going to contribute towards erosion. And then on the bottom right, over towards where the field houses are, there's that retaining wall. In large part, didn't really see anything that was of major concern. There's some maintenance issues that can be addressed, but in general, looked pretty good. So going back to just the kind of the understanding of the problem, I wanted to get some feedback from council on just generally what the sentiments are of the issues at the park, and then we can kind of talk about how to maybe address those problems. So I'll open it up to comments.
I have a question.
Yes.
Which issues do you think are the non-maintenance issues? Like, if you're going to point to issues that might require more substantial planning or infrastructure, what would they be? And do you think, give us some value judgment about whether they might be worth doing or not?
Right. So I'll jump ahead and I'll talk a little bit about that. So the bigger infrastructure problems, or the bigger infrastructure issues to address, would be related to flood risk. So that means anything that's associated with the potential for public safety hazards or flooding of properties, damage to properties, and that's going to be associated with these accumulation of flows, the areas in blue, and trying to address those. Those are significant projects, and kind of some of the things that have been explored in the past was trying to repurpose some of the space within the park to provide some regional detention. So that circle, that purple circle there in the center, that was an area that was identified as a potential area for detention. So I think that purple area, anywhere kind of along the creek there on the backside of the houses near the park, are areas that are opportunities for providing some additional storage, and by providing storage, some flow reduction downstream. The other thing is that you could do some storm drain improvements on Nixon Drive. That's a big capital project that involves removing of the pavement, of most likely utility relocations, and a lot of other things. And then on the right side, where the Western Hills Athletic Club is, there's an area there that's kind of depressed and provides an opportunity for some detention benefits. That would require, I think, likely some easements to go with it, and then some fairly significant, I think, engineering and construction effort to detain that water and then control the runoff onto Pleasant Cove. So those are kind of the bigger projects that would come out of this.
So do you have a rule of
Ca-
thumb for detention?
Councilman, could I get you to speak into the microphone here? Yeah, that's okay.
Sorry. I was just wondering if you had a rule of thumb on detention pond costs or like that, either one of those projects, just a wag of what kind of numbers you're talking about for hard costs, soft costs, total.
Right. I mean, so my WAG would be for like the purple area, the pond, when you excavate that and do some of the other work that would be associated with it, plus the engineering costs. I mean, I think that's probably ends up being anywhere from like 200,000 to 500,000, I would think. I think that's probably a fair rule to apply towards like any of these capital projects. The storm drain work, I think that gets into, more like the $1 million range. And so
And the yellow one?
yeah, the yellow represents the idea of trying to channelize some of that flow over by Six Pleasant Cove, and then I think there was some idea of maybe some minor storm drain improvements to connect it into the system and get off the street.
Did you, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
What water would the purple detention pond, that's at the back of the lower park, right? What water would that detain?
So that area, which I think,
If you can go,
I don't know if I can point. Right.
if you can go back to the option 2 page.
Okay. Let's see.
Here's my question generally. The purple circle is
Mhm.
at the level of the lower park, in the back of the lower park. The flooding is happening below that. And so that purple detention pond would not be, what water are you thinking that would collect? I happen to live, if you go back to that page, let me show you something.
You're right here, right?
I live here where the Pleasant Cove water comes and all this water comes. But the water that flows along Nixon is coming from Jeffrey Cove and from the parking lot right here at City Hall. That all flows into Nixon, and about where the purple circle, the point of the purple circle is, there's a drainage facility under Nixon where all that water flows then behind those 3 houses on Nixon. So that detention pond is above where the water is. So what is it gonna detain?
Right, great question. And since we're talking about the park specifically and what we can do with the park to provide detention benefits, this is focused on what can we do within the park. And so there is some detention, some storage benefit that we can get from whether that purple circle is there or a little bit placed differently. It'll provide some benefit, but when we're talking about trying to reduce the amount of flow in that creek and amount of flow that's in Nixon Drive, then that definitely goes outside of the park, and we need to find other opportunities, and most likely that's a much more substantial system of a storm drain and
Well, the concern I have is, why have a detention pond there? There's not water that would flow into it.
let's go back to the contour map. If I can get there. Well, okay, it's kind of zoomed in. And there's not a large drainage area that goes to where that pond would be. There's some
The
runoff.
pond is the green circle on this
Roughly-
page.
Yes. I think there's that represents an existing trail, I think, that goes around here.
I beg your pardon?
I believe this is a trail. right here. And so we're talking about this area in some shape or form of trying to provide some storage there.
For what?
Again, just trying to find ways to provide
So
some
would you
detention
pump the
benefit.
water from the gully up to that tank?
No, we would just be trying to capture the runoff from the park, which is coming from, the fields, and trying to direct some of that water and collect it in here. Does it collect a lot? The drainage area is pretty small. So if we're trying to provide a much more substantial flood reduction to the creek, then I think we're talking about a very different project, and it's probably not the park.
Well, a lot of the water flows that comes off the parking lot that now goes into Nixon, flows into what's called a detention pond that doesn't detain anything, that's between the parking lot and Nixon Drive.
Yes.
Where detention pond outflow, if you go back to the prior slide. What page is this, please? That's on the screen?
I wish I knew.
Number 4. Page 4.
4, okay.
Okay. Where it shows detention pond outfall, a lot of the water that's coming off that parking lot just flows into a detention pond, but the outflow is at the bottom of the pond, so the detention pond's not detaining anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would collect some of the water that's going behind and contributing to the flood conditions down
Yes. And
on lower property.
And-
So have y'all considered that?
yes. And so
Is
it's
that
on-
in this plan?
It's in this plan on what we call the lower hanging fruit, or the easier to implement. So the good news, I think, is that there's a presentation following this one that addresses trying to provide these, what I would call more like a maintenance level improvement. So with respect to the pond, there's opportunities to increase the capacity by some earthwork excavation, and there's an opportunity to reconfigure the outlet structure to provide more of that storage benefit. It's helpful, but if we're talking about trying to substantially reduce the creek flooding, it's not going to have a major impact, but it's helpful, and that I do agree with that.
So-
I would not agree with that, but I don't see the detention pond at the back of the lower part really detaining much of any
Well,
floodwater.
I'm referring to the parking lot detention that you're speaking to. And,
Okay.
And I'm saying
Yeah,
that
can be improved.
that would be, yes. I think that's an easy thing, I think, to improve.
Well, and my question really is, we could do minor improvements there, but if we're gonna do major improvements, if we're gonna majorly improve the flooding that is going down to behind the houses on Nixon and into Pleasant Cove, then you've gotta stop more water uphill. Is there a way to do that?
There's certainly a way.
But this plan doesn't
This plan
address that.
doesn't do it, and this plan
Okay.
is focused on the park and kind of the idea of also, we're probably trying to preserve a good amount of the park. This is, I think, an area that's been discussed from time to time about trying to provide a much larger regional detention. That would be hugely disruptive to the use of the park. That's an option. But you're exactly right that we probably need to find something upstream to help detain that water and
Well-
control that runoff, and it's hard to do in the developed condition.
And I also want to point out on both slide 4 and the slide that's on the screen now, that's slide number 4. If you could go back to the slide number 4.
Sorry? This is for,
What you're showing in green on that slide is not park property in full. I think there's a misunderstanding where the park property is versus the backs of those lots. I'll show you what I mean, if I can. approach the,
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
if you see these lots, the property line is here. So this green area, what is that supposed to represent?
So, good question.
He's got all kinds of stuff.
The
Yeah, that's not-
the source of the map, the base layer that we're using is just coming off of like a standard base map that you might pull from like Google or something. So that green is not exact. I would pay more attention to, unfortunately, this is green on green. So let me go to another slide.
Well, this one,
Yeah.
the next one's incorrect also.
Okay. So this is drawn basically based off of the parcels.
Well,
The-
I'll
the-
show you what I mean. If you see the yellow lot lines here,
Mm-hmm.
that's not park property. That's, so the green,
Right.
green line showing park property should be on the other side of the
Right.
yellow lines.
And that's my hand drawing on the PDF. But yes,
Well,
for clarification, the understanding is that when we're talking about the park property, it's inside the parcel yellow lines, and to look at this from more of like a general representation of the park limits, but not, an exact representation of it.
Hey, go ahead. I've got a question, but.
Then I also want to ask a question. So this proposal, I see that it doesn't include drainage coming off of the Western Hills property. Is that
Well,
correct?
We're showing it here, but so the area that we're talking about from the athletic club, it travels along that blue dashed line on the right. So there's a small area that crosses what we believe is the boundary of the park, and then it goes through roughly where there's an easement on Six Pleasant Cove, and then it enters the street. So we show it. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question though.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
now I know what the blue line means. I didn't know, there's not a legend on these pages to show us what these mean, but I'll point out one other thing if I could. If the blue line is supposed to show the flow of water, I'll show you it's incorrect in another respect then. Because this flow of water along behind these houses occurs within the lot lines of those homes. It doesn't occur within the park property.
Right.
And I've tried to, those were the questions from the first proposal that I sent to Ms. Wayman and asked her to address directly with Kay Freeze. Because this proposal from Kay Freeze, both this and the page 7 with the pink lines,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't properly represent what's park property and where the drainage is.
I don't know if I can see that.
Hey, AB, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was trying to get it back to the full picture. If we can go to, I don't know, like roughly page 7. Okay. So I believe these are the shapes that we're referring to. And what we have highlighted on here is from the far left, Project 1, which is where there's the detention area from the parking lot. the idea of trying to control that runoff onto Nixon Drive. Then we identified Project 2, which was some erosion issues over by the field house, and then some previously documented erosion issues over around the walls just north of that. And then on the far right, this is the runoff that comes from the WAC across Six Pleasant Cove and into the creek. So those were kind of more minor type projects that we had identified.
Did you discuss these, the pink property along Pleasant Cove, the pink, with Ms. Wayman?
We did.
We talked about these a couple months
Okay.
ago.
And you're aware the water doesn't flow to the left, it flows to the right at the northern part of that diagram.
Okay, I'm gonna move my mouse here and let me see if we're understanding each other and if I'm understanding the issue. But so runoff is traveling in this direction, comes down the road, and then it goes into the creek, right?
Right. It flows at a right angle, starting about here to this point. It doesn't flow to there. This neck of the park is not where the culvert is. The culvert is here.
Mm-hmm.
The
Right.
culvert's here, and it's on the back of my lot. You know, I just know it so well. I know this diagram's not correct, and I've tried
I-
and tried and tried to get it corrected.
I absolutely believe you.
Yes.
And what I want to drive home is the importance of this is to illustrate just generally the location, but I understand that it's maybe a little bit off here or there, or it's, should be pushed up a little
Well,
bit
I'm
further.
trying to understand what the proposal is.
Mhm.
And because the proposal is not matching where the flows of water are, I can't understand the proposal.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And I think, I mean, this isn't really a proposal because you had said to us that you wanted more feedback because most of what you were seeing was what you described as more maintenance and operation type things. So generally, I mean, you're familiar with this entire drainage basin.
Yes.
How much of a contributing zone do you feel like the park is versus the rest of the basin?
Orders of magnitude. I mean, the park represents a fairly small drainage area in comparison to the amount of runoff that's coming to the creek. And what we're talking about here was just some preliminary scoping discussions and kind of developing an approach for how we might study it, but we haven't gotten to the point of studying.
And can I follow up on that?
Sure,
Well, and I'd like to follow up too.
sure.
Okay.
Who wants to follow up first? But
I'm-
you're in
Well,
your groove, so ask your question, but then let's go to
Yes,
Mr.
my
Bishop.
follow-up was that I thought the council sent this back to K-Freeze to ask that K-Freeze bring back a proposal that would use solutions other than putting the runoff into the street and dealing with it once it's in the street. And so I thought we were going to get back from K-Freeze what your recommendations might be for detaining or dealing with the drainage coming off the parking lot and off both WAC and the upper ball fields onto Pleasant in some way other than just directing it into the street. That's what I thought we had asked K-Freeze to do.
And I think, without putting words in his mouth, I mean, I think that's what he was saying, that the $500,000 project would basically be a retention area downstream, kind of behind your house, right?
So, we've been discussing this, and our concern is that we can go down the path of doing a drainage study for the park. It will be a relatively expensive effort, and if we're imagining, like, if we have $50,000 to work with, let's just play with that number, you may end up spending $50,000 to do a study and then have no money to do something that's an actual improvement. And so what arrived at, what we think our recommendation is if that's the money that's available, is it better spent to try to do something that's smaller and more immediate? And so we do think that detention by the parking lot is something that's small and can be done more immediately. And I think there's gonna be a presentation here shortly after about how we can maybe increase that capacity and provide a better metering of that flow out. I don't think a whole lot of engineering analysis needs to go into that. Any sort of benefit is a benefit. Any of the runoff is coming off from the field houses where there's some erosion. I think that's another thing that can be addressed by a contractor and taken with also more of a landscape approach. And I think you can have the results of some actual, workout in the park. That would be an improvement. But we didn't want to lead you all down the path of let's go do a study and then we tell you it's going to be another few $100,000 to do a project. And so that's kind of how we've been approaching it.
And
Mr.
may I-
Glasheen, yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, Abby, I appreciate all of that, and I think I understand what you're saying, and I want to kind of repeat some of it back to you to see if we're understanding each other. So I think what I hear you saying is that, number one, the runoff from the park is not that significant when you look at the big picture of flooding and runoff in Rollingwood.
Correct.
Okay. So, and that's good information. That's good to know. So that was helpful that you studied that and tell us that. Number two, I hear you saying that there are not any really great opportunities to build new detention infrastructure in the park, and that they wouldn't be advisable because there's not that much water to start with, and secondly, it would interfere with the use of the park such as it is.
Correct.
Okay, so now that we've kind of ruled out that we don't need an big engineering study in the park, and there aren't any big engineering projects to do in the park to address drainage, that takes us to some of the simple, basic problems that you were calling maintenance. And you're saying basically for something as simple as the retaining wall by the field house, we don't really need engineering, and that a contractor can just make a proposal.
If it's a short retaining wall, yes. If it's not adding impervious cover significantly, if it's not changing the flow paths of the runoff substantially, then it would be like if you were putting a shed in your backyard. It's a minor change.
Okay. And you've got some of those minor maintenance type improvements highlighted that you have not gotten to talk to us about yet, right? Because we kind of got through the part about how we don't need a big engineering drainage study and we don't need to try to plan any big infrastructure projects, right? And now you're ready to move on to the smaller maintenance type projects?
Right. And so from the ones that we're aware of, we had identified some areas that would be considered potentially smaller maintenance projects, with the exception of Project 4. That one, I think, would be a bigger project, just because of the sensitivity of it traveling across a private property and not wanting to have any negative impacts there.
What is Project 4?
It's in small text, but it's on the right side, and that's the long one where we were talking about that flow going to the right.
Is there any description of what that project is? I see the name, Project 4. Is there a description of what it is in what you've presented tonight?
There is not, but what it is representing is some grading channelization improvements to convey that flow across really the side and the front yard of the lot and towards the street.
Was that one in the IIP? Do you remember?
Yes, there was a version of this. It highlighted channelizing, and then I think it had maybe some storm drain improvements connecting into the creek, and that would be on the downstream side of the creek, which is on the right of Pleasant
Okay.
Cove.
So, Project 4, let's just take this as an example. What's the flow of water? What's the volume of water going to the low point? And where's the low point?
I mean, I don't have those answers or those numbers
Okay.
offhand.
What would be the flow of water going to that low point after Project 4?
It's still going to be the same amount of flow. It's just trying to
Yeah.
contain it.
Contain it or accelerate it into the gully?
I don't know if it would be accelerating it. The idea.
What do you mean by contain it?
Containing it would be to add capacity, meaning imagine grading a small channel.
Well, it's
versus,
in the street now.
Right.
What would containing the water in the street mean?
There's not much that we would do from the street. I mean, the only thing that we maybe could do is having some sort of pipe at the end of this channelization, and then that pipe
Where
connecting
would
into the
that
creek.
be? Which end at the?
That would be on the downstream side.
Have a pipe on the downstream side that would do what?
That would convey that flow that's been channelized across the roadway.
That would, I'm sorry?
I was just saying, you can use my pointer if you want.
Oh. That would,
So,
so you put a pipe in the street?
We are way off track.
So we'd be looking at channelizing roughly, helping channelize this flow. That means grading out a ditch, and then
Underneath the street
well, up
or
here,
on the property?
up here, up on the property, so where there's the grass area. Once we get to the pavement, it's likely that we were probably going to be deeper than the road, and so then we would have to put a pipe in here and connect it into the creek system.
I'm just not, this report does not have the detail to allow us to analyze what's being proposed.
Well, it's not a report. Yeah, I think that's it. It's not a report. This
Well,
is just.
I don't know what it is.
We're the discussion to try to bring some consensus to how do we approach this. So before we go and we do a proposal, we go and we do a study, wanting to make sure that have consensus on what the objective is for the park.
Right.
Oh, so-
Well,
I think what he's saying is for us to go spend $200,000 on a full-fledged drainage study of the park would be ill-advised.
Yes.
It's
I
not-
understand that is a conclusion that has been reached. I don't understand it seems like there's a sense that 50,000 is the only monies available to address a problem. I don't know that that comes from council. I don't know that it comes from, I don't know that if that's the issue, then I think we're just throwing up our hands and saying we're not gonna do anything about these drainage problems. If that's the conclusion. But I had thought what we were attempting to do was find some way to deal with the flows of water coming off the park, including WAC. WAC is zoned park.
Well, there.
I don't understand from just these slides that don't even have a legend on them, what it is that is being proposed. I'm sorry. That's where I am.
I think he's not proposing anything yet. He's offering alternatives and needs more guidance on what it is that we
Yes,
want.
I understand that, but this pink area, I gave some detailed comments and came down and talked with Ashley and others at City Hall to explain that diagram was incorrect, both as to the land and how the water flows. And so all we've gotten back is that same diagram. And there's been some significant, the flows of water, the photos that are supposedly showing flows of water off the parking up here by City Hall don't show the kind of waterfall that happens when there's rain. I've submitted those 3 or 4 times to K-Freeze and to the staff and asked them to share them with K-Freeze, and they're not in these photos that are in this document. It's nowhere near the kind of water that's flowing off that parking lot when there's 2 or 3 inches of rain. And so I just don't know. It seems like some conclusions have been reached and this proposal back ends into them.
think this is it's not a proposal. It is two options, and they need to know how detailed we want the evaluation to be. I think
I can't tell because there's no words to that effect in here. So I'm unprepared to be able to understand what it is we're being asked to do.
I think additionally too, so council had already requested and got a proposal and approved 2 projects from IWS, Innovative Water Solutions, to work on that detention pond at the corner of Nixon and Gentry, and to also do some engineering on the field house. And that's right below the field house in the form of a detention or a retaining wall or whatever they felt like it was going to be. And those are in the next item. So I think what's happening here too is we have multiple contractors that we're asking to look at things and study things and provide things while we have a couple things already in the works. And I don't know that it would be fair to say, to give them this project without knowing what other things we're already planning on possibly constructing, which I think is where we are with the next item, possibly.
Well, I would like to go back to the vote that was taken at council with respect to the prior K-Freeze report that we received a couple of months ago. And have that come back next month. And I'd like something from K-Freeze that has a description of what it is that they are what this document is.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
The I understand that we had the IWS proposal. And then we had, I think staff proposed that we have a proposal drawn up for a full-scale drainage project from K-Freeze. And K-Freeze brought forward a document a couple of meetings ago, and we looked at that, and the vote with respect to that document was to ask K-Freeze to go back and look at green solutions to these problems, not just dumping the water in the street. So that's what I was expecting tonight, and first of all, we didn't get it by Friday for the packet, and this came in late today, and it doesn't have the information in it that we need to make any kind of, even have a discussion.
I have a question, if this is a good time.
Yes, sir.
So first of all, I want to thank you for all the time and effort that you put into this explanation that you've given us. And my question is, are we paying you guys for your time to study this and give us, a potential proposal?
No.
Okay. Well, I kind of feel like we should, because if we ask you to study a problem and your answer is the problem that you think you have isn't really a problem and you really don't need to spend a bunch of money on it, that's valuable and useful information. And I know you guys put a lot of effort into it, and I would like to, see the city administrator have some discretion to compensate you for your effort.
We do get compensated for coordination, and we do talk, and that does
Okay.
get reflected in the numbers. I mean, some of the things when we're asked to do a proposal, we don't like to charge for the work to do the proposal. So, in that sense, that we typically do that on our own time.
Well, I just want to say also, I appreciate it if we tell you that we want something and the answer is you don't really need it and it's not going to help. That's a very helpful answer, and not every contractor that we talk to gives us that answer. Instead, a lot of contractors will just go ahead and give us more proposals and contracts and billings, and so I appreciate that. And I'm satisfied that with your explanation that we don't need an engineering drainage study, and that there's not a good potential for any major infrastructure projects in the park, and that we really have some maintenance issues that you're going to discuss specifically, in which we've already contracted with somebody to design at least 2 of those solutions. And so I would, whenever the time's right to make a motion, I would be in support of, accepting your report, thanking you for it, and moving on to our proposal, the design that we've got coming up on the next agenda item for proposed solutions to the detention pond at the parking lot and the retaining wall at the field house.
Let's do this. Let's leave this item 7 open, but in an effort to continue to sort of move forward in the same vein of discussion, I'm going to go ahead and open agenda item number 8, which is report, discussion, and possible action regarding proposals for park drainage assessment from Moss Verde and or Innovation Water Solutions. This is Ms. Brown's agenda item, and I have Ms. Wayman willing to speak on it as well. A.B., don't go far, though. I know these are not your...
There.
Okay. I know these aren't yours, but we may have some additional discussion that comes out of it. So with that, I'll recognize Ms. Brown to lay out agenda item 8, and if you'd like to call Ms. Wayman, I'm happy to do that to assist.
Well, I put this on the agenda so that we could get updated on the requests that we'd had for getting proposals back from Moss Verde and Innovative Water Solutions from a prior council meeting.
Very straightforward layout. Appreciate that. Ms. Wayman, if you will add to it.
Sure. So we have met with Moss Verde. We actually did that walkthrough with the Park Commission and City Council. They came back to us after that walkthrough with additional questions. I think something they're kind of grappling with as we go through this is we talk about the things we might want to do in the park. So we might possibly be looking at some kind of I don't know what we call this in the lower park, kind of the connection between the upper and lower park, something kind of over in this area. We might also possibly want to pave the parking lot up here. We might want to add curb and gutter. So they have a lot of questions about, well, what do we need to know what you're planning to do or what you want to do, or does this need to be part of our study, or what do we need to do? So we've tried to give them the direction we can on that. They are working on it. They told us that they hope to have us a proposal by the end of the month. But I'm assuming that when we get it, it will probably need some massaging and talking through the different aspects of the park drainage that we've already possibly talked about. IWS, we have not yet requested a full park study from them because we were just trying to get these 2 proposals from them that we had approved a couple months back. These actually came in yesterday, so I apologize for the late additions to the packet. But these are the 2 that City Council, I believe 2 or 3 months ago, approved them to go on with the study.
Go to the other one.
I'm sorry, with the actual engineering work for the field house area, below the field house, as well as improvements to that detention pond at the corner of Nixon and Gentry. And so they have provided those here. They didn't give a whole lot additional explanation, and so if there are questions and things, I'm happy to go back to them and get those. But again, we got these yesterday afternoon. So.
And having worked with them initially before they put pen to paper, I can maybe explain a little bit. Obviously, one of the things that they're suggesting in that detention pond is to dredge out the detention pond to some extent to give it more volume. So that water that we've been talking about coming off of the parking lot would have greater depth and more volume, and then in an effort to slow that discharge out the other side, they're, I think, suggesting that we create a spillway in front of those 2 outlet pipes to help regulate and slow that down. A.B., I'm not an engineer. Feel free to, I know it's not your proposal, but you can maybe say you can use other words that sound more intelligent than the ones I'm choosing.
I'm digesting this as I see it. So what...
That's different. This is the retaining wall.
Yep.
Did we invite IWS to present this?
I got this at 5:30 p.m. yesterday, and I failed to ask them if they could be here to present it. That's my bad on that. They just got it to us, so.
I'm confused about Moss Verde versus this versus, I understand IWS is designed 2 projects for us that we're going to talk about now. But what is Moss Verde doing? Is that redundant of the presentation?
Moss Verde is more of a landscaping, like a landscaping company, as I understand it.
Right.
And IWS is more specializes in drainage work. It still has a landscaping component, but it's much more. It's less construction and more engineered
Yes.
drainage.
IWS
And,
is.
and Mas Verde, while they're landscapers, they work with engineers. So we walked the park with this landscaping company, and they were gonna try to bring those to life through an engineer that they were working with. So, and I think, I can't remember when that one got brought up, is to bring them into the full park drainage study idea, but it was a few council meetings ago, and so we reached out to them. They had done some other stuff with the park commission, I believe, previously.
And could we put as a running agenda item, Park Commission proposed capital improvement updates like every month? Because there's several items, like you mentioned the parking lot, for example, which we can talk about in context of these engineering proposals, but you know, these are evolving issues, and it'd be nice to kind of update where the Park Commission's thinking is on these issues as we get there, 'cause
We try to shy away from standing agenda items, but we will try to do a better job of always having something specific.
at least for the next 3 months
Sure.
or something, while we kind of work through
Yeah, can do
up to
that.
the budget process.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Well,
AB, I
and-
gave you plenty of time to digest that in real time.
We stalled
Okay.
for you.
Well,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
I just would rather have IWS explain
That's fine.
their proposal than have
Yeah.
K-Freeze guess at what IWS's proposal is.
That's fair. I look at
That's
that.
fair.
You're
I mean,
up
I'll explain the
It's
diagram a
dredging
little
and
bit.
the-
Yeah.
to end of
In the bottom
spillway wall,
image,
so
it
I
shows
guess I could do it.
cutting out earthwork in the pond, adding that capacity, modification of the outlet on the top right. So there's, in this proposal, I think the suggestion is that the outlet pipes are too large, and that there's the addition of an overflow spillway to the pond. And then I think, you know, I would offer up whatever it is that is proposed as part of this work, that, you know, as the city's engineer, that we could review this and provide concurrence. So,
I guess just shifting gears so you don't have to, as our engineer, evaluating this as someone else's work, do you generally think, without looking at the details, something like in this neighborhood would
yes,
offer
yes,
improvement?
yes. I mean, the only thing that we would maybe comment on is just a further look at the outlet structure. That's an important component, but maximize the storage that you can get from the pond as much as you can, and then control that discharge. So,
They're basically
Yeah.
replacing the outlet pipes with a spillway. That's what it looks like.
that's what this is proposing, yes.
I think we need to make sure we understand what problem we're trying to solve. And to me, one of the biggest issues we have over there is that we are not collecting all of the water that we should be collecting in the first place. And that was not designed as a retention pond, it was designed as a detention pond, which is just supposed to slow the water, but not necessarily hold it in place, because that then generates mosquito problems and everything else. But right now, we have a lot of water that flows across the wooded part of that, you know, between the parking lot and City Hall. And that should not be flowing across, because it's not being directed from the upper part of the parking lot or down the side, so it's all running across, and it needs a curb around the parking lot so that it directs the water where it needs to go, so it will go into the detention pond. And that hasn't been talked about or addressed anywhere.
And I think there's two pieces missing to this plan that, you know, maybe we would follow up and request. One is a plan view of the contours and, like you're saying, the control of the runoff towards the pond, and seeing if there's any shaping or addition of a curb there to do that. And then the other is that I can't tell if there's a drain pipe proposed as part of this, so that the pond does draw down and dry out in a timely fashion. So those would be questions that we would follow up with.
Okay.
And then can y'all look at flow of water that backs up on Nixon and is making it impassable in heavy rain?
Well, this, sorry.
But I think most of that's not coming off the park.
Right.
I would beg to differ. I've only observed it and done in a number of different rain events. It's coming a significant amount of water, and I'll come back to next council meeting
Down Gentry Cove.
Jeffrey
Or
Cove.
Jeffrey Cove, yeah.
It adds it to that water. There
There's a
used to
lot
be a
more of that.
culvert on the west side of Nixon where that water would flow under the street. Now that culvert is stopped up and the water is standing in the street at the low point where Park Hills comes down into
Is
Nixon.
your mic on?
Yeah,
Uh,
she just turned it on.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Just got a
where
text.
where all this water is now collecting there.
That just means that the culvert needs to be cleaned out.
I don't know. I don't know why it got filled in. It looks like it's been filled in. There's
No,
been
that's-
work done there at
Question
that
for
culvert.
Izzy.
Yeah,
But that's probably not on
not
part
on
of
the
this agenda item, so.
but that's why I think we need to look at the amount of water that's coming on to Nixon and figure out what to do with it. And if you look at Pleasant Cove is now, the same thing is happening there. The water is not going into the drainage is significant enough that the street is filling up with water. And it you know, it's just getting higher and higher and higher because of all the drainage that's coming.
And I think the majority of what you're talking about is in the infrastructure improvement plan as item F, which is Nixon Gentry drainage improvements, and the price tag on that was around $2 million.
I know. So that's why I have looked and looked and looked to see how much of that water can be detained elsewhere because of that cost and because you'd have to condemn a significant amount of private property to be
Right.
able to deal with it, frankly. So that's why I think it's very important to look at where water can be detained as opposed to putting it in the street. Because if you actually see what's going into the street now, it's problematic.
Right. And what's on the screen in the right direction in your mind?
I would like to see what volumes would be there, how that, what kind of holding time is associated with that. It's a nice diagram. I think I understand the point, but I don't know the concept. I can't quantify it from this.
So, if I might. So I too have walked down there when the parking lot and seen the water flowing out and going on to Nixon. I can attest to the fact that that's happening. And I'm not an engineer. And to Sarah's point, we don't want to have big pools of standing water, but it does seem to me that we could have a detention pond with a drain that can be actuated or unactuated down at the bottom of it to drain it. And you could hold it until the rain event passes and then open up that drain at the bottom of a larger holding area rather than just slowing down the flow. We could actually hold water there for a period of time until things dry out a little bit, then drain it on out, and that would do something to help mitigate the problem of it flowing out there on Nixon. Maybe we could even reuse the water. Hey, how about that idea? But something
That is
like
why
that
I would
seems
like
like a
some
rather,
green solutions.
you know.
We also are facing a time where water is going to become more and more and more precious.
Understood.
And so what we can retain and reuse is going to be better all the way around.
If I may.
Yes,
I
sir.
think we're talking about insignificant amounts of water, and there's only so much that you can do with that detention or retention area. And what you're trying to do is, I thought Sarah made a really good point. We're not trying to retain it or detain it. We're trying to slow it down. And the way you attenuate flow, as I understand it, is that you put a smaller outlet pipe in there rather than a valved opening that you have to go open. But the smaller pipe, diameter pipe, would cause that to flow out over 24 hours instead of over 15 minutes.
Well,
That's correct. And so, a few comments to the discussion. I think as we think about the modifications to the outlet structure, if it's a small drain pipe that outlets, then it becomes a question, is it okay for it to drain for 24 hours? Is that okay that it's draining on the street for 24 hours? And then, so then you may want to add to the project a drain that goes maybe on the backside of the curb out all the way to the creek, which would be some distance, but I think those are the questions that need to be asked. I think also you can certainly over excavate the pond, and then you introduce a need for a pump. That's a long-term maintenance concern. So there's options, but I think what this is presenting is it provides some storage benefit. If we need $1, this is maybe a few pennies, but it's progress.
You're talking about $10,000, maybe 20.
I don't know.
This is his proposal.
I know. I'm just saying it's not a more than $20,000 project. It's just looking
This
at-
one?
Yeah,
No.
that's what I'm saying. It's under 20.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate Commissioner Glasseen's comments. He seems to have enough data to make up his mind about what he thinks. I don't have enough data. And that is my concern, that we put a patch here and a patch there, and we don't have a complete assessment of what it is that's the problem, and can we ultimately inch our way to a solution. That's my difficulty. Mr. Glasheen, honestly, I'm taking your comments with the belief that you have a firm conviction about that. I just don't have the data to know if that, to know if that's right or wrong. I think there's more water, just from what I see every rain event the last 43 years. There's enough water and it's growing. The amount of water that's contributing to the problems that were identified in the IIP and that are on the slides you showed tonight. Those are problems. But we don't have a way to quantify them or identify the appropriate steps to get us to or toward a solution. And that's my frustration with this.
And could I?
We can,
respond?
if we, it seems that someone's made a decision that we can only spend 50,000. I don't know when that was made.
No one's made that decision.
No.
Well, that was the number.
I was throwing
Just
out.
just
Throwing
threw it
out
out.
numbers.
Okay.
No one's made that
Then the second concern I have, and this is, we've talked about using funds to the extent we can from RCDC for capital improvements, and to the extent we can do that, I think that's great. But I want to make sure that as we are doing those, if we can add drainage benefits or retention benefits along with it, that's what I would like to explore. Maybe it's cost effective, maybe it's not, but I'd like to see the data. That's where I am. Thank you.
So I've got a follow-up. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say that, I have definitely got an opinion that I think that we can move on from the idea of a big drainage study in the park or big capital improvements to deal with detention or retention, whatever the right word is. But that's not just a personal opinion that I have. In fact, I was very much in favor of getting the proposal from K-Freeze for an engineering drainage study because I thought it could be very helpful and that maybe there was a lot of water coming off the park and that maybe there were opportunities to detain or retain the water to attenuate the flow, I guess is a better way of putting it. But the engineer's report is that there's not a significant amount of water and that we don't need to go down the road of these major infrastructure projects. And so it's not just my opinion, I'm just repeating back what I'm hearing from the expert we hired to advise us as to what I'm hearing to make sure I understand it. And I am confident that they've looked at it enough. Their interests are aligned with ours in a way, and in fact, if they have a conflict, it would be a bias towards wanting to do more work and to do projects. So when they come in and tell us, no, you don't need to spend this money and do these things, that it's not feasible, cost-effective, or practical, I really appreciate that, and I'm happy to accept that. So.
Okay, if I might.
You
Mr.
may. I have something to maybe help us move
Okay.
forward, but yes, ma'am.
Where is there a report that says there's not a significant amount of water coming off the park? Have you formed that opinion, Abe?
So, I mean, what is significant is certainly an opinion and subjective.
Where is the
when
report?
The report is the infrastructure improvement plan and the hydraulic model that accompanies it. When we're talking about the magnitude of,
Did you say it's the the old IIP report?
that's what I would reference, yes.
I thought it did not include park drainage.
Well, it shows a citywide hydraulic model representing flooding throughout the city, and that shows, when we
Flooding.
look at that, we can see the depth of the water, the slope, we can get an idea of the magnitude of the flow, and the ratio of the contributing area from the areas from Gentry versus the area of the park. I mean, yes, the park has some area to it, and there's some enhancements that you can do to provide benefits, but if we're talking about really reducing riverine flood risk, it's a much bigger project.
Could we have you pull that data from that report and identify it for us?
What?
We
what
could pull
data?
that basin.
Well, Abe has said that the data comes from the IIP report that K-Freeze did several years ago, 2018, 2019, right? And that he can tell from that report the water coming off the park versus from other sources is not significant. I'd like to have him show us where that is.
Okay, so we are way off our agenda.
Yeah, we do need to get back on the agenda. I think what he's saying is the IIP looked generally at the whole city, so you can tell from the.
I've read it. I know I know.
Okay, well,
That's not the,
everything that direction is a hill. Everything over here is a tabletop. And tabletops drain less than hills. Am I wrong, engineer?
Runoff is faster.
So, but I think what maybe we could do to help advance this forward, AB, could we maybe get you to either talk to IWS or have IWS talk to you? Maybe we can take and try to get some data added to what they've drawn, because I do think Councilwoman Brown makes a great point. Like, we would need to know the volume and what is being improved and how much that's improved to see some analytics for downstream. Like, we could probably do that based on some of the modeling
Sure.
that has been done, right?
Of course. I mean, at the request, we can pull some data together. We can provide some contributing areas and some rough calculations and provide some, which would be the data to kind
And
of
as
support
part of that, we could look at this whole basin, and you could break down what the contributing zone is that's not the park and what the contributing zone is that is the park. I mean, we know that part of the contributing zone is about 8.9 acres, but we could look at what the contributing zone is from the rest of the basin, could we not?
We can certainly pull that.
Okay. So we can get some data that I think would be beneficial.
and we also need to include in park what is coming off the WAC property.
That would be included.
Well,
yes,
it's
we would-
excluded from the
Yeah.
report we have tonight.
We'll look at the whole basin. I don't know that all of, I guess all of that would be in the same basin.
So, I mean, I don't know if we want to get into the details, but we can basically, it'd be a drainage area map. We'll have these 3 contributing areas, the acreage that's associated with them, and then we'll run some quick calcs to get flows, and then we can see if that's what we're needing, or we can take it further along.
Okay. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
thank you.
Thank you all.
And is that an action item that we're gonna vote on?
I think it's balanced on the head of a pin right now, but I think we have marching instructions to get with them. Come on up.
Can we take 60 seconds to see the other drawing of the?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Yes, we can.
Yep. The one that's the.
Go back.
drawing.
Yeah. And scroll down, Nikki, if you would, or go to the other one, yeah. I think that gives you an overhead view of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I haven't spent a lot of time with this in either, but
So Ashley, was there anything they told us?
They didn't give us any additional information. This shows the continuation of that current retaining wall, some backfill, but not significant backfill, because you can see it doesn't even reach those trees that are up there between the field house and the trail, and then some addition to help it kind of, this pipe concrete head wall on the side to kind of, I guess, channelize it on the other side of the trail.
So, can I express my repeated concern that
yeah, this.
it is difficult, inappropriate, frustrating for us to have items on the agenda that we don't get any information on. Because I looked at this stuff Monday night. This didn't come until Tuesday evening. We didn't get an email that, or maybe we did, but I didn't see it. Because, you know, I'm working during the day.
Yeah.
And so I'm not looking at this stuff when it comes in after the fact, didn't know that this was even in there. And so trying to have a detailed discussion on something that we haven't had time to look at is,
Totally understood. I'll defend staff on this one. This was on IWS,
well,
But-
right.
but
But,
yes,
You know,
understood.
we keep getting stuff at the last second, and that does not allow us to do our job properly.
And the
Understood.
same thing with the K-Freeze document.
Well, anything.
I think, and we could have chosen to not put these in the packet since we got them so late. We had the item requested of us to put on the agenda, so we tried to get any information we could, but I understand,
Right.
they came in late.
This was an item that was an action item from last month's agenda where we asked staff to get this.
Right, but if
And-
we don't get the information in order to have time to
Right.
look over it properly, then it's, we're not able to evaluate it and
Right,
do a
I agree.
appropriate job for the city, so.
Understood.
Well, it's not on the agenda, but I would like to ask if we can reestablish with our vendors and other people that they are to get their items to us on the Friday so they, before the meeting, so they can go in the packet.
We can do that. Okay.
So, question.
Yes, sir.
So, assuming three of us agree that this is sufficient to move forward, the next step would be to ask staff to go out and bid this. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And then while you're getting bids, they could study it, and no action's gonna really happen on it other than getting bids until next month anyway. So there'll be lots of time between now and then to study this, think about it. Right?
That's correct. We can, well,
The- The other
And I will say, let me add one thing. I'm not sure, we haven't seen numbers on this. It may not be a bid requirement.
we had a previous potential, because I believe, so RCDC has already agreed to fund this project. So they've
Right.
already approved the funding, council has approved their approval of the funding, and I believe it was 31,000 was the general guess, but this was before we had this information to share with contractors, so it could be
It should
more
be
or less
very similar.
Yeah, but I would have a little bit of heartburn of asking IWS to engineer something, draw something, and then use their plans to bid it out to someone
Oh,
else.
they're a contractor?
Yes.
But we have to bid it out, but we can compensate them.
50,000.
Not if it's under $50,000.
Right.
But I thought you told me.
Well, we do have to contact, hub vendors if it's under 50. So if it's between 3 and 50,000, we do have to contact historically underutilized businesses to,
But we
provide
wouldn't give them, we
quotes.
wouldn't give probably these engineered drawings to them. We would tell them what we would need.
Correct. My suggestion would be that if we, tell IWS if we don't use you for the job, we're happy to pay you for your time for doing the planning, what's fair for that?
Sure. Well, we paid for this, or we will. We have not paid for it yet, but you approved a proposal that included, I think it was
That's what I thought.
600 for one design and like maybe 400. It was, you know, not much, but, and I think we thought that we would be taking this to go get bids with this information. I'm not sure, I guess, what that process is, or if IWS would do it for us. I don't know if they do the construction.
If they would let out bids,
Right.
we already have a pretty good idea of what it ought to cost.
Mm-hmm. From the
Okay.
previous.
Yeah, Alec?
Yeah, just to clarify, is this the same, how does this relate to the project that RCDC like funded?
It's the same.
Okay.
It's the
We
same
had-
other
we had
than
a-
the fact that we're not backfilling as much.
And the drain pipe is moved away from the retaining wall about 10 feet.
Correct.
And we had like a couple of bids on that.
We had one bid,
I
and
thought-
it's painfully out
Yeah.
of date now.
We had two.
Do we have two? Oh, you're right, we did have two. One of them wasn't great, but yeah, I'd like to, it's too early to move anything.
It's too early to move. Can we?
What, did Alec, did I answer your
that's all I
question? Okay, actually, Ms. Brown had another follow-up.
Yes. I don't recall whether the Park Commission has seen this IWS proposal.
No,
They have
we
not
just got it
looked at
last night.
Yes, okay, then my recommendation would be that the council not take action tonight on items 7, 8, and 9, that we ask for those plans to be updated as we've discussed tonight, and to be prepared in time to be presented to the Park Commission at their next meeting, and then brought to council with a recommendation from the Park Commission.
Okay, you're gonna have to, is that a motion? I'm gonna have to have that
Yes.
restated.
Second.
Well, hold on, I don't know, there was a lot in there. That was kind of a quadruple motion there, so, okay,
I
if you'll
think I can
restate
do
your
it.
motion.
My recommendation would be on items 7, 8, and 9, that we
Wait,
ask.
Nine's not,
Recommendation.
nine's not before you, hold on. On
I'm
items
sorry.
7 and 8,
I'm sorry, 7 and 8.
okay.
Well, Melissa said that they didn't wanna go through with the demonstration project until the people came from the Violet Crown and did that, so we don't wanna take action on that tonight anyway.
Okay, we're not on 9, period. So, if you have a
Items-
motion related to 7 and 8,
Yes,
I'll
on
take it.
items 7 and 8, I would request that we ask K-Freeze and Mossverde and Innovative Water Solutions to prepare, to present their proposals to the Park Commission, that we not take action on those items tonight, that we ask that they present those those proposals to the Park Commission at their next meeting, and that those two items then be brought back with those updated reports to the council for our next meeting.
Okay, you have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown, a second by Ms. Hudson. Is there discussion? Alec?
Yeah, the only question I had is like, I think you mentioned like three, like what were those innovative, what were the three?
That there's K-Freeze, Mossverde, and Innovative Water Solutions, and each of them is a little bit different.
I mean, I just saw just the innovative water solutions, that's the only one.
Item number 8 has both Mossverde and Innovative Water Solutions.
There's no proposal from Mossverde yet. They're still working on it, and they said they were.
They're gonna do a walkthrough with the Park Commission next week and get a proposal to them for their next meeting.
That's
Someone-
that is also Mossverde, but that's about trees, right? Or what is that about? Or trail? I'm sorry, that's
The
the walking
trail
trail.
and
That's totally separate from this other thing that they've already walked the park with them for. And they said they hope to get it to us by the end of the month. So I will say also with next month, our council meeting is moved up a week early, so that might give us a shortened time frame to get all of this done in case we don't get proposals in time. But I just want to throw that out there in case we have difficulties getting everything completed.
The point is to get it to Park Commission before it comes back to us, and to have them make their presentations, have each make their own presentation there too.
Okay.
Discussion?
Yes, sir.
So, first of all, I do think it's good for Park Commission to hear about it again. I do think we're only talking about the innovative water solution issue though, which is the pond here that we're changing the overflow, and then the retaining wall. Those are the two issues. I do think that they are fairly self-explanatory, and that it's not necessarily practical or feasible to expect IWS to show up in person and make a presentation to Park Commission when the chairman's been here and has heard the conversation, I think can present them, and especially given that the retaining wall is virtually identical to the project that Park Commission already approved once, and the other change to the outflow of this little retention pond is minimal, and it's more of a maintenance issue than, I wouldn't even call it a capital improvement project. But I do think it's good to run it back by Park Commission, but I would also suggest that while we do that, we go ahead and get bids from the interested parties on those two projects to do the construction work, one from IWS and any other bids that staff thinks we're required to get or that would be advisable to get. That'd be my proposed to amend it.
And I don't think K-Freeze, I mean, K-Freeze can supply backup materials, but they don't have a proposal or presentation. But I mean, the materials you provided could be presented at Park Commission's backup materials, but I don't think there are.
And the requested data that.
Right.
Yeah, to be clear, my interpretation of that motion was to provide that data that we discussed of looking at the basin and looking at those contributing zones and that sort of thing.
All right.
Exactly.
Okay, so I just wanted to try to get K-Freeze some breathing room. The other thing is the downspouts on the field house. It's likely are pointing directly down that hill. If you could include moving those and getting those relocated to where they would not be such a direct flow and such a to that whole area, I think that's part of the whole problem, is the pointing of the downspouts off the field house.
Well, they've designed it and they've got a diffuser on the end of it, and it doesn't really increase any of the water that we're getting. We got a bigger problem next to those stairs where K-Freeze referred to it as a footpath that shows wear going down there. And I don't know if you noticed, there's a picture you called it foot traffic, but it's next to the stairs going from the upper to the lower park. And there's actually a big 5-foot long piece of broken curb that somebody has thrown in there to try to attenuate that water flow down that path. But I don't know if that's a washout or a footpath, but it's something that needs to be fixed. But it's a different problem and a different issue, and I'm confident that with a diffuser on the end of a French drain pipe, that the French drain itself will attenuate the flow out of that field house area, and that you're not going to have a rush of water out that pipe.
Okay.
And then with a diffuser on the end, and then potentially some other rocks or whatever needs to be put in below it to keep it from eroding, I don't think it's going to be a problem to have an outflow pipe.
Okay, the motion is to send it to Park Commission.
Yes.
And I intend to make another motion or offer an amendment to that motion to make it just the IWS 2 projects and to go ahead and get the bids while Park Commission's looking at it. Those are
Y'all can talk about that.
Like, I don't mind that. I mean, that's kind of what I originally thought was going to happen. But I just don't, this Mas Verde, I don't see anything. If they can get something together in time to present.
Well, I'll also
Maybe
add,
works
we're
with
happy to
IWS.
ask Mas Verde and Innovative Water Solutions to go to the meeting and testify. I can't promise you that they will.
I just don't think it's practical or realistic to expect them to. So my proposal, my amendment I'm offering is that we just send those 2 issues to Park Commission, let the chairman present them if they have questions, and don't want to approve them, they don't have to, but if they approve them, meanwhile we get bids and we can move forward with these projects at our next meeting.
Okay, that's
Here's
yeah.
my response to Kevin, if
Yes,
I
ma'am.
could. I think it would not be a great idea to get bids while we're still trying to get finalization on a proposal. So we wouldn't know what we're asking them to bid on. And for that reason, I would not be able to support Mr. Glasheen's amendment.
Got it. Yes, sir.
Just one comment on that. Like, I do think that it's kind of useful if we had some idea of the cost when they go to consider this idea. That doesn't seem like it would be harmful.
Well, they're not going to get the bids.
Okay, so to be clear, I'm gonna take the vote on the motion that's before you. I'm gonna get to her. I'm gonna take the vote that's on the motion before you. Then I will open the floor back up to make any other motions after that. And so if you can go from there. And now, come on up.
Okay, this is gonna be a little more philosophical than helpful. I don't know if it'll be helpful or not. Just like you all, Parks Commission wants to have the maximum amount of information to make decisions. So I very greatly appreciate Brooke asking that Kay Freeze and IWS and somebody else, because oftentimes in our meetings, which we try to keep to 1 hour, which I know is wonderful for us, is that there's just questions. We're like, we have no experts to rely on or ask. Is it possible, are we allowed to have Kay Freeze and IWS and Mas Verde come via Zoom, or must they be in person?
Probably Zoom would be preferred.
So what the idea would be, at least to have them at that meeting, because one thing that was revelatory to me today was hearing him say in person, and it is really nice to hear it in person, and because I'm only one person, even though I'm the chair, I do really recognize that I have a variety of views on my park commission, that it's great having an expert who says, you don't really have any significant drainage issues, because at least they will have heard that from an expert and not just from me saying, well, that's what I heard and understood. Now, they could watch this whole meeting and get that from it also.
Or parts of it.
Or
It's not
part-
quite.
yeah, you're
It's
right,
not quite.
you're right.
It's not quite. I'm trying to mitigate fights.
Yeah.
It's not quite what he said, but.
I know, that's why I'm trying to be careful about,
Understood.
that's why it's important to have, but I think it would be great for us to have those three, and I would, I think I can wrangle it so that we stay focused on what we're supposed to do. And IWS to explain. I personally, because in a more practical world of making things happen, I do love the idea of going ahead and getting a bid, or 2 or 3 bids. I know contractors hate it when you come back and go, okay, well, we've decided, we've changed our whatever. But one of our pain points at the Parks Commission is that we don't feel that we've accomplished very much in the last 2 or 3 years. And so it feels good to be moving towards something. And so if we had those 3 experts to kind of hold our hand at that next meeting, and just be there for reference, by Zoom, they don't need to be there in person, then I think we could, and have 2 or 3 of those bids to look at, that we would be able to look at it and at least make a motion that says we support or don't support something. Parks Commission doesn't make any final decisions anyway, so everyone's gonna have to have a long conversation somewhere else about it. So, but we do think we could help you on that.
Thank you. All right, additional input for your vote. Yes, ma'am.
Hearing from Ms. Morrow,
Yes, ma'am.
I would amend my motion to include getting bids from these 3
Look at us getting along.
contractors.
All right.
Or
Hold on.
asking for bids from Mas Verde and Innovative Water
Wait,
Solutions.
what bids are Mas Verde, it's Mas Verde, what
Whatever
are we
they're-
getting bids on?
When they provide you something, if they can give some numbers with it.
Okay.
At the point that they give you,
My understanding is they're gonna look at the trail and issues associated with trail stabilization and trees.
I
That's a
don't know.
different,
That's
that's a
different.
different
That's
time of Mas Verde. That's
Yeah.
separate.
It's
so-
IWS and whatever other contractors y'all want.
we would
So-
interpret it to mean if Mas Verde presents something related to drainage in the park, that we
Yes,
would also
okay.
get numbers with them. That's how I'm interpreting
but-
that motion.
But not, okay, got it.
Thank you, thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
And IWS, we've got something on paper from Dodge, so we can get numbers on this. So,
And
okay.
I accept the amendment with my second.
Okay. The amendment is taken, it's re-seconded. I'm looking at Desiree to make sure she's got all of that added. Okay, with that, no further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you, council. Moving on to agenda item number 9, discussion and possible action regarding a trail rehabilitation demonstration project. We got close to.
Can I make a motion?
You can make a motion.
Well, hang
Well,
on,
hold on,
hang
wait, hold on,
hang
one. I'm sorry, I'm sorry,
That-
I'm
that was
sorry.
my agenda
I'm
item.
sorry, I'm sorry, yes. I realized my folly as I did it.
Okay.
This is Mr. Glasheen's agenda item. I'll recognize Mr. Glasheen to lay it out.
And as the chair, Ms. Mora of the Park Commission, pointed out, Mary Elizabeth Kofer wants to delay this another month so that a friend of hers who had made some, done some of the contracting on the Violet Crown Trail would have a chance to make a proposal for this project. And so they've asked us to table that for the next month, and so I move to do so.
Okay, you have a motion to table. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion to table and a second by Mr. McDuffie. Is there further discussion, and did he cover what you wanted to do anyway?
Yes.
Okay, look at that. Yes, ma'am.
I
Ms.
do
Brown.
have a question. Who is All Seasons Lawn Care, and did we get any other bids, or is this?
All
how do we-
Seasons is
how do-
who, yeah, All Seasons is who we use around here a lot for little small projects, and I think originally we were just trying to get some data for this agenda item, and
Just
so
get numbers,
getting
yeah.
some numbers for you to look at. So
And,
Okay.
and I want to say that I really appreciate Izzy Parra, our Director of Public Works, who looked at that problem with the trail maintenance, with the rocks heaving out with freezing and sinking, and had this suggestion, and went out and talked to some folks who could, you know, contract and propose a solution, which I really appreciate his initiative in doing that, and that's where that came from, so.
Okay, great. Yeah, and yes, thank you for all your good work, always. Okay, with that, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Moving on to agenda item number 10, discussion and possible action to approve the installation of a new air conditioning unit in City Hall. I'm bringing this to you, council, and I'm passionate about it on behalf of our staff. They nearly ran me out of town last year when my suggestion was to go buy some little rolling air conditioner units. I was informed that my big idea did not work as well as I told them that it would. And so we're trying to get ahead of this while the temperatures are still reasonable and we can get on somebody's calendar to come replace the air conditioning unit. It is shot. We knew it was shot last summer, and they went through the longest heat spell in the history of Texas with with 3 little rolling air conditioner units, and I promised them they wouldn't have to do that this summer, but I delayed it as long as I could. So I do bring this to you. Ms. Wayman, would you like to speak on behalf of your hot staff?
And just, that's probably why you're all freezing right now, is because we don't ever turn it off anymore. So even when it doesn't need to be on, we keep it as cold as it can possibly be. So we did, Izzy got us a few quotes here. They all came in about the same neighborhood, about close to 15,000. Izzy, I think, might have a recommendation just based on a company that's been around a long time and that we feel is, you know, trusted.
Yeah, hello. We have 3 companies that we called, well, actually it was 4, but only 3 of them reached back out to us and gave us some quotes, and we asked them give us a range from the entry level to the high end, which is a 2-stage. Where this part of the building, we only need a 1 stage to actually get it nice and cool, and that was around 14,000, almost 15,000, and that was all 3 companies. At the higher end, which was like about $18,000, $19,000, which I don't think would be useful right now if we do get a new
Is it just the condenser or the air handler or both?
everything.
So,
Yeah.
for risk of getting shot here, the I don't know AC, the 2-speed versus single speed on the Fox, is that, you just said something about zones or something?
Yeah, it's stages. So
Stages.
the 2 stages, that would mean if you would have different areas, well, we do have, sorry, we have two other, another section, but we have another AC unit that's running as you walk out that door. So
Okay.
we just really need this area.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And two of the vendors were 5-ton, and then one of them, it looks like was 4-ton.
I believe,
The bottom, the last one, whatever that was.
which is the Fox or the?
No, the Fox were 5-ton.
The Fox is a five ton.
I think Smart Air said something that had 4T.
Yeah, it's not, again, the other companies wanted to do the 5-ton because that's what's out there right now.
Okay.
And the Smart, I believe they're the ones that wanted to do the 4-ton, but because they're trying, that's their lowest level.
Okay.
My recommendation was to go with Fox because that's a company that's been around longer, and if we need a warranty work, well, again, we want to go with somebody that's been here longer, and let's go with, my recommendation is to go with Fox.
Are we gonna demo this when we do a new city hall or what? We don't know.
We don't know. We would
Okay.
have a discussion about trying to salvage it, but my excuse last year was that, hey, we'll have a new building at some point, but
Right.
I've run out of that excuse. So I think we get a few seasons out of it before we need to make that decision. So
Go ahead.
I had one, I noticed that the Dell's bid said it includes sheetrock repair.
Yes.
Does that have to be done? Do the other bids include that too and just don't mention it, or is?
Well, Fox is actually gonna go through there, through that vent.
Oh, okay.
And
So
Dell's,
they wouldn't have to do sheetrock.
correct, and so Dell, they wanted to go in through the, storage unit here, cut open ceiling, tape. Yeah, that was
Okay.
their way of getting up there.
All right. Got it.
good question.
Motion?
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
Motion to approve the recommendation.
Which one?
Fox.
For Fox? You have a motion to approve the installation of new unit using Fox.
Second.
And you have a motion by Mr. Glasheen, a second by Ms. Brown. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Congratulations, staff.
Hey.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. And from a budget perspective, we have about 4,500 in the building maintenance line item that we believe we can use. And we know we'll have some savings in some other areas, so we'll bring back a budget amendment, probably with the end of the year budget amendment, just so we don't have to do things twice. But it will come from, things that are already budgeted. We're sure it won't have to come from
It's happening at a
balance.
good time as we get to the end of this budget year, so.
Yep.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to agenda item number 11, a report from Chief of Police regarding recent automobile break-ins. Chief, come on up. And I think this was, whose agenda item was this?
Councilman Glasheen's.
Mr. Glasheen, would you like to open up or go straight to the chief?
Yeah, I've heard lots of reports from folks about vehicle break-ins in the neighborhood. It's anecdotal evidence, so I was wondering what the data actually shows, if there really has been an increase, and what you recommend we do about it, if anything.
Right, so the data shows that last year at this time, there were 8. We've had 8 this year as well. So while I don't want to use the words on par, but if we haven't had an increase, we would like to see that decrease, obviously. So what we have looked into possibly implementing is one, we are short-staffed, so we do have somebody in the pipeline that we're hoping to hire to also help alleviate some of that nighttime patrol as well. And then we have also started talking about possibly doing a volunteer camera system. Basically, you letting us know if you have a camera on your house, that if we have something that is in your area, that we know we can contact you to get some type of camera data. And then the other thing is they have actually been trying to work really hard on stopping vehicles in the middle of the night. It wasn't so much public information that we did have a pursuit about 3 weeks ago with a stolen vehicle that was in the area that we do believe was going to commit burglaries in the area. We do have some possible suspect information or a lead that we're following up on to see if we can actually close that loop. what we also, and I know we need to possibly get better at this, is basically just getting the public's cooperation on locking your vehicles, removing your valuables. Don't become a crime of opportunity, and I think we need to push that PSA out probably a little bit more than what we have. And I know, as you acknowledge, there is some controversial as far as if you implement license plate readers. We are in the beginning stages of gathering that data to see if it would be best in this area for that type of implementation. But again, it's going to come with some red tape that we're going to have to work through as far as any type of public information request that could possibly come from the cameras and different things like that.
Thank you. I know the city of Austin put in license plate readers, I think 35 of them last year is when they got installed. And I know one of the concerns people have about the personal home cameras is that the resolution isn't high enough to actually capture license plates.
Right.
And then, of course, we had a white Suburban that was stealing mail last week that had its license plate covered. So the pictures weren't that helpful.
Right. And so the one thing about about that vehicle is I spoke with the officer and asked if the license plate was covered, and we don't have any indication that that license plate was covered.
It's just low resolution pictures.
Right. And so, as far as, so one of the cameras is, you have two different type of license plate readers. You have one that's inside the vehicle, which obviously the vehicle would need to be present in order to capture that data. Or there's there's cameras called Flock Safety, which are basically standalone cameras that are solar powered that capture license plates, and they basically capture pretty much broad information, which is going to be your license plate, your make and model of the vehicle. What that also they allow you to do is they allow you to place alerts on those vehicles. Like if I have a stolen vehicle, I can put it into the Flock system, and whatever camera it passes, it will alert that vehicle just passed the camera. So that is an option as far as putting them on the outskirts, at like the entrances of the city. But like I said, it has been controversial in the past. And so, like I said, there is some red tape that probably would need to be worked through.
What did you call it, Flock?
It's Flock Safety. And I actually have I did a Zoom and a webinar with them last week that I can actually forward a little bit of like a brochure that they just, so you can have some basic information.
And do you have any kind of a range of what it might cost to put in that?
I do. So it has an implementation cost of $650 if it's within the city. If it's on TxDOT property, it's $1,250. And then the camera system, we wouldn't own the camera. You actually would pay a $3,000 maintenance. And so basically, they own the camera, they come out, anytime that camera goes down, we don't have any type of maintenance fee. It is a $3,000 a
Is that
year.
per year?
A year, per camera.
Okay.
And what exactly would it enable you to do as an officer?
So, if we have, let's just say we have a crime that we believe is committed between the 2 a.m. and the 4 a.m., we would be able to pull that to see what vehicles pass that camera.
Okay.
And so you don't have to have a full license plate, because we also ask that. If a vehicle has their license plate covered up, it would still capture the actual vehicle, so we would still be able to, we wouldn't have a license plate, but we would be able to narrow down some more information.
So, just about 2 months ago, somebody wearing a mask and gloves at 3 in the morning came to my driveway and was carrying a screwdriver and tried to get into my garage, broke into my car, got a remote, was trying to open my garage door. And so that's fairly disturbing.
Correct.
Since I was there at home asleep. And I saw it on my Ring camera, but I didn't capture any vehicles. So it just seems like in that sort of situation, if somebody's doing that sort of thing, it might be helpful to identify vehicles that were in the area.
Right, and so that's where, so I think the misconception, it captures the actual license plate data, and it is upon law enforcement to go narrow it down, and then actually dig deeper to see who owns that vehicle. And so I think, you know, like I said, the misconception is that anytime you pass by, it's gonna alert us that you specifically drove
Right.
past this camera, and it's not so. It's just it depends if we wanna actually go in and gather that information.
And if that was a stolen car, it's not that helpful. Or if it's somebody's cousin visiting from Houston they were riding with, it's maybe not that helpful.
Well, so if it's a stolen vehicle, more than likely it would be entered into the system. So that's the other thing. So if a vehicle is stolen in city of Austin and it passes one of our flock cameras, it will alert, and so our officer knows that that vehicle is in the area. And so it's in real time.
That sounds helpful.
That's good.
So,
That would be helpful, and then we've had incidents before where people captured on their Ring cameras a vehicle driving up, letting somebody out, stealing the software, and the two driving out, and then, so if we had these at the entrances and exits, you would catch the license plate of that other vehicle that was aiding the stolen
Right.
one inside
and
the city.
Westlake Hills is actually looking at implementing 9 of them in their city as well. So you become part of a larger network. Like you said, City of Austin has placed some. Travis County Sheriff's Office has placed. So I'm not sure if you also are up to date as far as, I know you contacted me when that whole thing was happening at Randall's, when SWAT had come in. It was a incident that possibly was going to occur at Tesla, but they located him in this area based on a flock camera.
Oh, wow.
So it can be used, like I said, but I understand that there are some concerns with that camera that I'm willing to do some research and work through as well.
And it is, you mentioned the concern that anybody could request an open records request
That's correct.
of the data.
Has that been a problem in Austin? Do we know?
So I put a couple of calls in. I know Maynard has them, and Jonestown, they haven't had any issues. I put a call into Round Rock. I'm supposed to be receiving a call back because they actually put several in Round Rock as well. So I'm trying to see how they navigate that. We actually did put a call in to our city attorney as well, and so she also said that there are some things that we would need to work through, because it could possibly be that we would have to release the information because we will own that data here at the city. And so obviously that is concerning, and see how we can go about fixing that or navigating that. And some of that is navigated by policy too, and making sure, see how we also are handling that data. The other thing is that it actually only has a 30-day retention on the
So-
video.
Just to flesh it out, the concern is about privacy issues. And for instance, if someone was having an affair or something like that, and then somebody wanted to get that information of cars coming and going and that sort of thing. So these are some of the concerns that are involved in implementing something like this.
Or even, I want to know who was at my neighbor's
I don't
house
have
over the
anything to
weekend, or I don't have that.
Do what?
I said, or even like my neighbor had a party, so I want to see who all was
Sure.
there.
Yeah,
I mean,
That's pretty
Or my
creepy.
kid had a
Or
party
my-
that was out of town.
Or my
I don't
kid.
know who all showed up.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who is that cute girl at the party?
Yeah.
So yes, so those are the biggest concerns. What we would be as far as like the public information request side.
Yeah, I think the volume of requests we get that are for body camera, dash cam, those are already pretty overwhelming, and we don't have the capability to redact videos the way that so often we have to send them off to the AG with that request that we can't blur out license plates. Like, we don't have that kind of software, and so all of that would have to be worked through as to how it would apply to these videos too.
Who's asking for that stuff?
We can't tell
it's
you.
It's a secret. Usually it's part of an investigation or something, but if there's a incident we have to blur out everything that's not part of the incident. So if there's like a wreck or something,
That's
the
correct.
other cars driving by, you have to do a lot of
Oh.
redacting
Correct.
and things like that.
And that's a majority where it's like based off of the collisions, and so.
Oh, we do that all the time. Like
Yeah, you.
Yeah.
You're-
almost
you're-
You're
every
the
day.
one.
Almost every day we do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
So we're the
Alec?
Yeah, I guess I
Yeah.
would start by just saying if we can get some more help at night, if that's what you're looking at, we could start there. I mean, my car was broken into twice, but I will say that I did leave the car unlocked, and didn't take anything. But
Did you report it?
yeah, we reported it.
I had
They
2
did go.
break-ins.
Yeah.
And Barry had 2 break-ins. That's 6 of the 8 right there.
Well, you guys leave your cars unlocked.
Not anymore.
Well, we went to our neighbor
Drive to them.
just next door, and they had a Ring camera, and the guy went into my neighbor's car too first, and then he was being driven by somebody. They just parked, hopped out. One guy, he had a mask
Right.
on too, and
and so that's where we're also running into an issue is that if something, because believe it or not, I have several that nothing was stolen. They just rummaged through. And obviously you have evidence of somebody going through it, and then it's not being reported to us. And so like we have a big map in our office as well that we're mapping out to see if we're having like a hot area, you know, where exactly, and
What time they're coming?
what, yeah.
yeah, this one I think because on the camera he was able to see it was like at 1:30 or something like that.
It's usually around that 2-3 a.m.
Do you know how many stolen vehicles we've had
One
this
uh,
year?
this year.
My neighbors got stolen last year across the street.
Right, so we've had one, and when that vehicle was recovered, so I also pulled Travis County data to see what they're, you know, are they having an increase, and kind of, so what, it seems to be pretty much is where, when they have a increase on that night, we're also, so it's kind of the area. And so when we had our stolen vehicle and it was recovered the same day. Actually 4 vehicles were stolen in Travis County and 2 of them were recovered in that same location.
No.
And so we're part of a bigger problem. And so like even with that one, we're working with Travis County. We sent some information to them to see if we can get some information on that stolen vehicle.
And wasn't that one located, the vehicle itself had a tracking device, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And that one was located off of Manchac.
Interesting. That's very helpful. Appreciate all the research that you've done on this issue.
No problem. I mean, because like I said, I hate to use the verbiage that we're not seeing an increase, but I mean that it's pretty much solid.
Sure.
But we don't want to be there. We want to,
Sure.
you know, do better and have a decrease if anything.
What's our staffing like? How many officers do we have and how many should we have?
So we are staffed actually for 9 officers. We currently have 6.
Okay.
And with that 6, that includes myself.
And do we have somebody who's on patrol every night right now?
Every night. Yes, sir.
Okay. And if you got the extra staff, what would change?
So with part of our reorganization that we just completed a couple of months ago, is the ultimate goal is the way our shifts run is that we have a daytime officer, we have a nighttime officer, and then we have a patrol corporal that helps between that 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. That way they can see both sides. And then with the reorg, we would add a 5th patrol officer to put more boots on the ground to be able to fluctuate at night. So even though we had a patrol corporal that's also there till that 12 a.m. hour, that 5th patrolman allows for that overnight coverage. So it's actually adding, in theory, 3 people at night.
And I'll say Chief is doing a great job in looking to fill those spots.
Right.
It's a difficult task. You're going to have an opportunity to talk more about that in our budget season. To try to be creative with not just salary, but I think we've done good work on the salary front, but I think we're
Right.
going to try to be creative in how we maybe train some new personnel and look at some of those issues.
Correct.
One question. Do you personally think cameras would help or license plate readers, or do you think they'd just be more of a hassle for the staff?
Well, it depends. If we use them for strictly for law enforcement purposes only, of course, it obviously would be 100% helpful. If we start receiving stuff due to non-criminal
Affairs.
requests, then it would be problematic.
So we just have to see how that goes. But based on your experience from talking to other cities, it's been more of a concern than an actual problem. It sounds like it hadn't been an actual problem for getting these extraneous requests.
No, so like I said, areas around us have already been able to implement them, and they're not reporting any problems from the camera. It's actually been helpful. But here, we're trying to navigate some of that.
All right, thank you so much.
So,
Very
no
good.
problem.
Rolling Wood's a little different than some cities.
Is there,
No kidding.
is there a way to legally restrict the access to that information?
Are you talking about to the public?
Right.
I don't
That's
believe
what
so.
that's what we're trying to find out.
Right, and that's where,
It's all subject to the Texas Public Information Act, and then we send it to the AG, and they determine what we can, what we have to redact and what we have to release. It's a process.
right.
And we would need 6 of them to, are we looking at 6 of them?
So what I would really like to work for is 3 right now, and then
Okay.
possibly do like a step implementation if we feel like we need more, but it's basically at Frontage, at Edge Grove, and then at Rolling Wood and Bee Caves.
Okay.
So that way you can get the main thoroughfares.
Okay. But we're just posted for an update tonight. So.
That's it. That's
Okay.
it. And like I said, I still have more research I have to do on my end as well.
All right, great. Thank you, Chief. Any other questions for Chief? All right, hearing none, we will move on to agenda item number 12, discussion and possible action to approve the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget calendar. Pretty straightforward. This is what we do every year, council, and kind of laying out to you what the workflow will look like. And I'll let Ms. Wayman, we always try to update it a little bit, make it better year to year, and I think we've done that. So Ms. Wayman, will you explain the calendar to them?
Yes, so kicking it off today, our meeting is going from here through September. We'll start at 6 so we can add our 1-hour budget workshop at the beginning of our meetings. We've also done a little bit of massaging the dates to try to get, so we're not doing something at the very last minute, because we do have to have our budget approved by September 30th, and I think last year we met on the 28th or 29th, so we were really cutting it close there at the end, just because of the way the noticing fell and all of that. So we have tried to move our timeline up a little bit, so that way we can do our final approval of everything at our regular city council meeting on September 18th. So I think that's a good thing, better for transparency, people's ability to join that meeting. Other than that, the content of the workshops and everything is pretty much the same as it was last year, unless there's any input on any reorganization y'all would like to see. But I believe this will get us to a legally approved tax rate and budget this year.
We also just added in, obviously the things highlighted in sort of that tan color, those are the council-related items, but we went ahead and added in those items that are not highlighted, that are just in white. Those are kind of the other things that are going on behind the scenes that are not council-related, so. And any questions? And I'll take a motion if you all are good with approving it.
Move to approve the budget and tax rate calendar for 2024-2025.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown, a second by Ms. Hudson. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Moving on to agenda item number 13, discussion and possible action on a draft ordinance regarding a proposed zoning amendment to prohibit rental of amenities in the residential zoning district. This is Ms. Brown's agenda item. Recognize Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This zoning amendment is something that the council recommended be passed to the Planning and Zoning Commission for their consideration. Planning and Zoning Commission then asked that a couple of questions be clarified, sent it back to us basically at their last meeting, asking that we get clarification on essentially 2 questions. One was whether the rental of amenities would preclude photo shoots or one-off filming of a commercial at a residential site. And then the second one was whether or not the ordinance would address rental of parking. And so those two things were, they asked for clarification from the city council whether or not that was intended, either of those were intended. And so this is back here for us to discuss those items and send it back to Planning and Zoning for their final review and action. In discussing this with our city attorney, we clarified I've gotten clarification from the city attorney's office that photo shoots would not be considered a rental for recreational use of an outdoor amenity, and that would not be precluded by the proposed language. I don't recall about filming of a commercial. We have situations where homes in this area are, it's not exactly a commercial, but either a realtor or an architect or an interior designer will have a photo shoot to place the shoot in as an exhibit of work in a Lux magazine or Austin Home or something like that. I don't think any of that was intended to be precluded.
They're not renting the property. They're
Exactly.
taking pictures of it.
Exactly. And then the question about rental of parking, I'm not sure, Ashley, where that came from. I don't recall planning and zoning.
That was a request of Planning and Zoning
planning,
Commission. They
okay.
wanted to know, I guess, people renting out parking spots. I guess, would you like to?
Yeah, well, that's right. Going down to, excuse me.
Dave Bench, One Randolph. Yeah, really, the question was whether or not whenever there is an ACL festival or South by Southwest kind of event, people have towards the end of Rowan Wood here, sometimes rent out parking space for attendees to those events. Is that included in this discussion here?
Well, in my understanding of, here's what I would say, and I guess we need our city attorney's response to it, but you have your own driveway, and you have a limit on the number of permits you can get for on-street parking associated with those big events. I don't see a problem with someone renting space on their driveway for a day or two for parking at ACL, but that would be my view of it.
I view the same.
I don't think people will be renting as much as just, I don't think people will be renting as much as just letting their friends park there.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is what
And
we do.
that would not seem to be a recreational purpose.
Really?
The ordinance addresses use of an amenity for a recreational purpose, and that would not be a recreational purpose, so I don't think it would be covered.
It allows them to attend a recreational event.
But not they'd be walking down to Zilker Park, but,
I agree with, it's not
yeah, yeah. So, my recommendation is that we send a response back to, that we ask our city attorney if my understanding would be that photo shoots of a home or of a person at a home would not be for a recreational purpose and would not be precluded, and that rental of a parking spot on a driveway would not be prohibited by this language.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Well, they also asked about charities.
And again, I think that
Charitable
would not be a
events.
recreational use.
I agree. I'm just trying to say also they asked about charitable issues. And then you talked about the shooting commercials. That's precluded as well. Like if somebody was actually doing a commercial.
I don't recall a commercial. I recall the discussion about photo shoots, but I don't, those can be placed as an ad in like a Lux magazine. So if that's commercial,
We have had events, we have had incidents of people actually shooting commercials, not for the property or something like that, but actual commercials at properties before. So I'm just wondering.
Doesn't ordinance refer to
in my
amenities?
view, if we want to take that up, we would take it up in a separate ordinance, because this deals with uses of residential property for recreational purposes and not other kinds of events or rentals.
Fair enough.
Okay, good explanation. Any other questions? Happy to take a motion, whatever you want to do.
Do you want to go ahead and move to adopt this draft ordinance?
We can't. It needs to go back to planning and zoning first.
Oh,
They were asking for clarification of those questions so that before they voted on it. So that's why it had to come back here.
is this an ordinance that falls under planning and zoning?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Then let's send it back, right?
We've clarified, we've gotten the city attorney on the spot, and we send it back. I think we ask staff to report.
Okay. I second that motion.
Take a motion by Ms. Brown and second by Mr. Clushian. Are you clear on what you're reporting? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you, council. Moving on to agenda item number 14, discussion and possible action on an ordinance amending section 107-75 of the city's code of ordinances to provide that the front yard of lot shall be the lot's address street. Council requested this last month to come back. Ms. Wayman, give a quick refresher.
Yes, last month when we approved the process for address changes, there was a lot of discussion about requiring that the front of the home be the address lot of the house, and this was the ordinance that we worked with legal to get brought back, and we're hoping for any further direction or clarification from council on this. This would also, it is set to section 107, our zoning code, so it would need to go back through the Planning and Zoning Commission for the public hearing process.
Thank you. Council? Have to take a motion to get us going.
I would like to discuss the proposed language in the ordinance.
Okay.
If you see the item, the third attachment under this item is language that I suggested. I think if you look at the ordinance on line 24, the operative wording is that the address street of the lot shall constitute the front yard. I'm not sure that that's correctly worded, because the street is not constituting the yard. It's the yard that faces the address street of the lot that constitutes the front yard. So I have recommended a change. I looked at that and then I realized I did just a quick search on Municode of front yard, and there's a defined term in section 107-73 for front yard. And I think we could make this a lot simpler just to modify that definition. If you see in my memo, zoning code section 107-3, there is the definition of front yard as it exists currently. The next paragraph down below suggests that 107-3 be amended rather than 107-75, and 107-3 be amended to say the term yard comma front means the yard which faces the address street of the lot is located between the main building on the lot and the address street easement and extends across the lot between the two side lot lines. It's on the second page of my memo. So that we've just taken the existing definition, adds that front yard means the yard that faces the address street of the lot retains the remainder of that language.
Okay, thank you, council member.
And that, then we would also strike, we wouldn't need paragraph B in the proposed ordinance, and we would strike what was C. Now, the building official shall determine the street address and thus the front of the yard of each corner lot, because we don't need that anymore.
Okay, and this may be great. I'm not sure. I think I have not had a chance to look at this one. I think we got it late today, and it went in the packet late today. Maybe we could. Well, regardless, the ordinance isn't ready if we're going to make a change on it. Well, I'll hear from the rest of council first, and then we can decide what we want to do.
Well, I agree that that wording is confusing, because I read it and I went, that doesn't make sense. And I didn't see this because it wasn't in the packet when I reviewed the packet.
I don't think we had the ordinance on the packet date, and I just read it closely this morning.
Right. But I would suggest, instead of saying that the yard which faces the addressed street, that it's the yard which abuts the addressed street, because it doesn't really
Or it's
have a
the
face.
yard between the building and the address street.
Yeah.
Between the building and,
Yeah.
well, yeah, that would get it. Because the address street is only one of those streets.
Right. But yes, I agree that that current wording in B needs to be
May I say,
revised or moved somewhere else.
may I say something?
Yes.
Dave Bench, One Randolph. Maybe this got discussed last month, I don't know, but are you sure you want to start dealing with front yard definitions and not consider setback issues that would be associated with that?
This does not change the setback, it just determines which orientation the house would, which face of the building would be the front. It
Wow.
wouldn't change the front setback or the side setback or the rear setback. It would just define the addressed street as the street that the front of the house should face.
Is this something that's gone to P and Z,
Right.
or does it need to?
No.
No.
It,
we
it
haven't
will
seen
need, it will need to go to
Yeah.
P and Z.
Can we just send it to P and Z to work
Yeah,
on
I'm just,
now?
yeah, I don't understand it enough yet. I'm just asking a question, so I'd like to really look at it.
It's coming to you regardless.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Councilmember Brown, would you be okay with sending it to P and Z with your memo and suggestion?
Well, I think it's
consideration?
better coming, I think you need to weigh in on this, frankly, and come up with something, because what's been proposed, I
Well,
think,
I'm sorry, I interrupted.
what's been proposed doesn't work, I don't think.
Sure. Well, I drafted
I-
what's proposed and I ran it by people and they understood it. So I think it's just, everybody's perception is just different.
Well, the problem is that we have a defined term for front yard, and that wasn't changed. And so that leaves it, the definition of front yard should be where it's made clear which yard is the front yard, rather than having it in the substance of a.
I don't have any disagreement with that. I'm happy.
So I think we need to have our city attorney take a look at it again and send whatever you propose back to planning and zoning.
Okay, and I'll take into consideration the
Yes.
comments here. Yes, I can do that. Yes, ma'am.
We don't all think like lawyers.
Right. No, I get it. I'm not offended. I
Yeah.
take no pride and I understand that.
I think they just forgot to do a check on defined terms.
I actually saw the defined terms, and I personally didn't think that this definition would conflict with the requirement, but I could be wrong, and I'm happy to take a closer look at it.
Okay.
I'm not arguing with
Okay,
you. I don't
all
just,
right.
I,
Thank you.
there's always room for interpretation, and so I'm totally okay with taking this direction and making a proposal.
Do we need action to send it to?
I don't think so. I'm comfortable with what I've heard to take it to P and Z. It's gotta go to P and Z anyway, right?
Yes. Okay, good. We can, if we're good and everybody's good with that, we'll just let that happen on its own. If not, we can make a motion.
And can I clarify, this will go to P and Z just before the public hearing process? We aren't being directed to go ahead and start the public hearing process with this ordinance. We're just bringing it there for discussion first. Is there any direction on that?
My view
Or-
on that would be that this and the couple of other things that are on hold pending a public hearing with P and Z could all be put in a package for the public hearing.
Okay.
Once there's agreement on the language.
So it goes
Or-
to them one time first to discuss the language before being sent to public hearing is what I'm just making sure. Is the first time they're gonna see it, is it gonna be a public hearing, or do we want an item first? That's what I wanted to make sure. Okay.
Okay. All right, everyone good? Do you want a motion? You good?
I'm good.
Okay. If that works for everyone, we will move off of agenda item number 14, move on to agenda item number 15. Update and discussion, possible action on the citywide electronic water meter project and amendments to the electronic water meter upgrade policy. I will open this up and ask Ms. Wayman to fill in the blanks, but we had a great a really positive pre-construction meeting with Amoresco. Very impressed with their entire team, and they had all of their team that came in from the utility transition, the IT folks to their field representatives who will be working in the field. They seem to really have their stuff together, and we're excited to get this going. And with that, Ms. Wayman, fill in the blanks.
Yes, they absolutely do. So they have been working on this for months, getting everything ordered. They actually weren't going to be able to get the meters here until much later in the year, but were able to leverage some other ways to get those here earlier. So we're actually going to be able to begin our project on June 3rd. So the rollout will take 1 to 2 months. I think it's closer to 1 month, but they're just stating 1 to 2 to make sure that we, cover everything and don't overshoot there. The full details of the project, I've attached a couple attachments here. One was the original one-pager that talked about kind of why we're doing the project. I think at this point that information is pretty much available. We also sent out a citywide letter in the last utility bills. Those also went out to those who got digital utility bills. We were able to get that information out, so everybody should be aware of what's happening. It's going to be about a 30-minute process at each home. When your home is completed, you will get a door hanger stating what happened, that they were able to replace your meter. Some things that we did decide probably needed to be considered. So we also currently have a water meter upgrade policy that was approved in November of 2021. That was approved back when we were planning more of a gradual rollout of these meters. So we were just going to be, we were directed to be replacing meters as a new home was being built or requested a larger meter, or meters went bad. We were supposed to be replacing those with electronic meters. But at that time, we were not able to get electronic meters. So there was also concern about if you order, the fewer you order, they were much more expensive. And so we weren't able to get bulk meters at the time, and we were also only able to get very expensive single meters. So all that to say, we put in a few additional electronic meters, but for the most part, we still have mostly mechanical meters. The policy that we have in place talks about who is supposed to pay for those electronic meters. And so we wanted to come back to you all and discuss how or if this cost is going to be passed on to residents. I will say, based on the financing we've secured, we have enough in the budget for water and wastewater to just make those payments to pay off those meters without assessing any funds directly to any property owners or any residents. Previously, it was the city was going to cover up to a 5/8 meter, and then anything above that, the homeowner was going to need to be charged for. That's our previous policy. And so I don't know that we need an answer today. I think this is something we can mull over, possibly take to the utility commission if that was something that you would like to see. And then the other additional thing is we've already had one, I believe only one request to opt out of the electronic meters. And I think staff's recommendation would be that we don't have an opt-out process, like we wouldn't for really any other infrastructure project, just because there would be additional, I mean, they would still be on a manual read while all the other, meters would be read a certain way. And if we were to have some type of opt-out process, there would likely have to be some kind of fee assessed to make up for that. And so these are just the things we'd like to consider.
What was the reasoning for wanting to opt out?
They didn't say in this specific instance. We've heard, I mean, they're electronic. They send things through cellular service, and so we've kind of heard that was going to be. We may have a couple people be concerned about that and not wanting that in their electronic water meter. But this person did not say what the request was for. So.
Ready for comments?
Yes, ma'am.
I would agree with not letting people opt out, because it doesn't make sense for us to go this route to try and get electronic meters in everywhere and then not put them in everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we do need to set maintain the policy that we have on the size of the meter that the city pays for. Because I imagine there's a significant difference in cost between the different meter sizes, depending. Residential meters are typically 5/8 or 1 inch, but the commercial meters, some of them are way bigger than that. That's gonna have a higher cost, and the bigger meters for the residential service put a bigger load on the city, and so, on the system, because it has the potential to deliver more water to that home, and I think that we should keep that cost difference assessed to the property owner instead of having the city cover whatever size meter somebody wants to have put in.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Would this, will there still be paper billing available, or will billing also be
Yeah, we'll still
automated?
be.
We will still be offering that. All the same payment methods would all remain. They'll just be able to pay online as they currently can, or pay by ACH.
Okay.
Another important thing maybe to distinguish here is this original meter rollout versus future upgrades. That might be something we want to talk about. So, depending, they may now currently have whatever size meter they had when we rolled out this project. With the policy, or this future policy, I think should cover then if they upgrade at that point, or if there's damage to the meter at that point, what happens, because these are a lot more expensive than the traditional mechanical meters. So I don't know. We can work on getting some numbers right now for the current rollout that talk about what the price differential is. Currently we're having a little bit of we haven't quite got those answers yet, because currently all the costs include getting people here to install them and do all of that. So they're all rolled in right now. So we're trying to break out just the meter costs, but would like some clarification on if it's this rollout or future meter upgrades that we're going to be doing any charging for.
Is the current amount that we approved, it's all inclusive of all the meters that are going to be replaced, right?
That's correct. We've been budgeting 50,000 each year in water, or 50,000 in water, 50,000 in wastewater, because the meter performs both functions. It captures our water and it captures our amount for our winter averaging, and so that is enough currently to make those payments on our
Administratively, would it be harder administratively if we had a two-tiered system?
Two-tiered.
Or if you're having to charge an extra fee to those other?
I think it would up front. Something additional that we can maybe explore. We already charge more per month for bigger meters. So the larger your meter is, the bigger your base fee is. And so maybe that's something we can look at updating there, as opposed to updating an upfront cost. And that might, have the same effect, but just make it more of a routine process.
What was the proposal based on? What size meter for residential properties was the proposal based on?
Which proposal, I'm sorry?
The
The
Amoresco.
contract that we have with Amoresco,
Mhm.
what size meters are they putting in for all the residential properties?
They're putting in the size that they had currently. So it's staying exactly how it was. If they had a 5/8 meter, they budgeted for a 5/8 meter and they purchased one, up to a 1 inch on residential, and then the same for the commercial, whatever size they have.
But nothing bigger than a 1 inch for residential.
I don't believe we have anything bigger than 1 inch on residential, or do we?
We may have one or two that are like a 1.5.
I know that we had somebody that came in at one point that wanted to put in a 2 inch meter. I mean, and that's hugely more capacity than a 5/8 inch meter.
Right.
So what do you need tonight? Oh, I'm sorry.
One more question. When these new meters are installed, will they be installed where the old meter is, or if the old meter's in the backyard, can you get them moved to the front yard?
It's wherever they are.
Right, it'll be where they are. We can't move the service in this same project. They'll be installing them where they are, and then in the future, if the line is able to be moved, they can move it. But that would include moving the service line, and that wasn't part of this project.
Okay.
Alec?
I was just gonna say, if, like, when we voted on this, I guess my understanding was that all the meters, we've included everything, so that's why I would say, let's, right now, not worry about, like, trying to charge
Mhm.
people for it. And then if there's like one or two people that really just don't wanna do it, like, maybe just charge them something extra.
It's not their meter.
That's what I was gonna suggest, if they wanna opt out, just charge them a fee for that.
But it's not their meter, it's the city's meter.
I understand that, I'm still suggesting that if people wanna opt out of it, that we let them and charge them a fee for it.
I would like that, except for the administrative cost of maintaining someone who can go and read those meters and input that data.
That's what the fee's for,
Yeah.
and then I don't think it's gonna be that big a deal. You're gonna have one or two people maybe that do it initially, and they're gonna switch.
$100 a month.
Right,
If you did that, I would want it to be extremely steep.
right. That's what.
$150 a month.
That's what when we talked to Amoresco about it, they said they've had communities kind of mull over doing that same thing, and they would all land on, okay, maybe if we're going to do it, let's make it, a pretty large amount, and let's only allow it for a certain extent of time. Like, okay, we'll do this for a year, but then after that, we're gonna replace it with the electronic meter. So I just don't know. I mean, we'd have to look into I'm sure there's a way you can manually enter a read in the new software, but we're going to be getting a new software with it that's supposed to pull in all the reads. So that would just be something we'd have to look at. I will say they really very much discouraged us from
Because it's
doing
not
that.
just about the read, it's about that office,
You'd have half an employee
that
for
corner office too, that has
once
to.
a month just doing that.
Right. And additionally,
At
the
least.
mechanical meters are they're slower. They're generally older. They don't capture as much water as accurately, and so there's likely water loss involved in that as well. That is something that we're probably going to hear about a little bit. Is that these meters are going to be very accurate, and for a lot of our meters currently that are older, they generally fail and get slower to the favor of the customer. So we're going to maybe have a little bit of jumps in some bills. And so I think that's why we every year we alternate budgeting money for a water study or a wastewater rate study, and we have not done one in the last couple of years because we really feel like we needed to wait until these were in, because we're going to have so much more data from these new meters than we've had from our previous meters. And so I think we'll have a really good opportunity at that point maybe to revisit the policy, decide if we want to change that base rate based on meter size, things like that.
Well, I was gonna say, if everybody's meter's old and they're all like in favor of the customer, even if everybody gets accurate, the amount we're paying the city for the water, like Austin, or where we're getting our water from,
Is the
it's not
same.
gonna change, so
Right. Yeah, there's
if we all
some.
switch over at the same time with accurate meters, we should all end up paying the same price, is what I'm saying.
Right.
Okay, what do you need tonight?
I think we really need to know tonight if there's going to be plans to charge for this rollout of meters. If there is if we would like to charge some amount for anything above a certain size, that we probably need to roll out pretty quick if that's the case. We can deal with the later with the policy about if something breaks in the future, if they want to upsize, we can come back to all of that. But this would be something we would like to hammer out today.
I understand your point, Sarah, but just for the ease and simplicity of it,
Well, for this rollout, if that's what the cost was based on already, I'm fine. I think for upgrades, for people coming in and wanting a bigger meter in the future, I think then
I think that's a good compromise.
that they should bear the cost of
Okay.
an increased size.
I think that's a good compromise.
I think so too.
Do you need a motion on that, or are you good?
I think we're good on that. At some point, we'll amend this policy or possibly, repeal the current policy and create a new one, but I think it can stay on the books. I don't think it hurts anything being here for now. We'll take this direction and we'll probably bring something through the Utility Commission in the next few months or maybe after the summer when they're back to meeting more regularly, for those future ones. Luckily we expect these to have a 10-year lifespan, or limited warranty as it goes throughout the process. So hopefully we're not going to be replacing meters in the next couple of years.
And we're clear as a council, we're not allowing opting out.
Why don't y'all, let's get clarity on that with the motion.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
That's how I think you should proceed, but
Okay, I agree.
I do, in defense of staff, they're going to get that question, so we probably ought to give them some clarity.
I move we do not allow residents to opt out of having, or utility customers, residential or commercial, from opting out of the electronic meter.
You have a motion, is there a
program.
second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Hudson, a second by Ms. Brown. I know there's disagreement, let's vote, and then we'll figure out. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
Mr. Glasheen, what were you?
I'll go with aye.
There being 4 ayes and 1 nay, the motion carries. All right. Thank you, council, for that clarity, and thank you, staff, for moving forward with the project. Keep us updated, let us know how it's going. Moving on to agenda item number 16, update and discussion and possible action on a recommendation from the Park Commission regarding commercial field usage and maximum participants. Ms. Wayman?
This came after we had the discussion with I-9 Sports a couple months ago about the number of participants they were going to have on the field. It appeared that our rules that we had posted were not clear. I think it just said 50 participants max on the fields, and so we weren't sure if that was field 1, field 2 separately, 3, 4, and 5. We weren't really sure how that number was arrived at, and so we sent it back to Park Commission. They discussed it, and the motion that they came up with was, and they felt like it was fair, was 30 participants max on field 1, 30 participants max on field 2, and then 60 participants max on fields 3, 4, and 5. This would cover softball, baseball, the current uses, should cover I-9 for the most part. If they ever have more than 30, they will be on 3, 4, and 5 when it's also in use. So I think this covers everything, and this gives us a lot more clarity when we're allowing people to come rent the field for commercial purposes.
Do we need to clarify that it is not 60 participants for each of fields 3, 4, and 5?
I think that would probably be a good clarification. That was definitely the intent, was
Well,
as a
that's-
whole
that's what
3, 4, and 5.
That's what I figured, but the way it's written, I could see somebody arguing that it's like, well, I have 60 on field 3 and 60 on field.
Yeah, maybe for fields 3, 4, and 5 combined would be like some kind of language like
Right.
that to make it clear.
Right.
And we can definitely reflect that in the rules when we post them online if that's clear today.
Yeah.
Should we say participants including staff?
Mm-hmm.
Sure, that would be an option.
I'd suggest that because, there could be another dozen staff out there.
Oh, you mean coaches and stuff like that? Okay.
Oh, you're saying 60 include, okay.
Seems correct.
Happy to take a motion to that effect. Is that a motion? Okay. You have a motion, council, to adopt the recommendation with the addition of, how did you do the participants?
Just making it clear that
making
Three,
it
four,
clear
and
that
five.
it's
Staff is
3, 4, and 5 is combined, and that participants include all participants. You have a motion by Mr. Glasheen. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Mr. Glasheen, a second by Mr. McDuffie. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. With that, we will move on to agenda item number 17, update regarding transportation issues in the Mopac South Expansion Project. We have a guest here with us too that I'll probably ask to come up. First, I'll give you on the transportation issues. I wanted to just update council and let you know that we, at my direction, staff was nice enough to set up a meeting with TxDOT, and we did have the police department available and on that Zoom with us. Just to let TxDOT know that we continue to see a number of accidents on the, and I have a mental block on the
It's gonna be the 3,000.
the 3,000 block of Bee Cave Road. I just call it the turn. And so we have updated TxDOT that continues to be a safety concern for us. That does fall within what they call the GAP project, which is the project we've talked about in Rollingwood for a long time of trying to get walkability and some lane upgrades from basically Walsh Charlton on to Mopac. But this specific conversation was more about the safety concerns that we're experiencing there at that corner. We've had a rollover. We've had a number of. Chief, do you want to talk about?
Correct, so obviously we see an increase when it rains, but unfortunately, in March, we did have a fatality in that area.
Where is the 3,000 block?
So it's kind of right, it's west of the Palisades.
Okay.
I'll explain
Where
it
the
the way
big- where the big
the
turn-
way I
The big
explained it to
curve.
TxDOT is
There's
turn
no
onto Mopac or turn onto Bee Cave Road, put your right wheel on the white line, and drive that white line. And when you fall off into the ditch, then you know that's it.
I know where you
That's the one.
are.
They chuckled. But they did, so a couple of things that came out of that. They are going to give it special attention. What is the word? Hydroblast. They're going to first hydroblast it, which is a fancy word of saying that they're going to power wash it.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah. They're going to power wash that area first. They've ordered that to
Just
try.
the pavement?
It's. They made it sound like a lot more technical than power washing, but
It kind of roughs up the surface.
Right,
it-
kind of grades it
yeah.
in a way.
But with water, and it gets all the grime and soot and all the things to make it have better
less-
traction.
Less slippery.
Yeah. So they're going to do that. They're also going to take a closer look to see if there's some engineering things that they could do to build that up, because it's literally falling off into the culvert right now. So they're going to do those things, and then we are going to circle back with some those are what I would call Band-Aids for the short term. And then we are going to continue dialogue with them to try to get that overall project to stay on a funding trajectory that will require some decisions from this council and some things that we'll have to do in terms of getting that to a finalized project. I think several years ago they were at a 30% engineering phase. They're now at a 60% engineering phase. They worked with a number of former city council members and mayors, many mayors, to try to get the rights of way as narrow as possible to increase our likelihood of success of working with the building owners along the stretch on both sides of the road. So I think they've done some good work there. We just kind of have to stay on it because it is a safety issue at this point. So that's your update on the transportation issue. And then I'll ask Ms. Wayman to give us a little bit of a Mopac South expansion project update. And we do have Amy Patillo here too that may or may not have some things to add. We're happy to recognize you if you do. So Ms. Wayman?
Sure. So the project is picking up speed a bit again. So they last week held a technical working group kickoff meeting. Technical working groups is their term for like very specific topic meetings that deal with different things, utilities, parkland, bike pedestrian. So they've invited all stakeholders, everyone who might be possibly interested in any one of those topics and how it affects, them, to be participating in these technical working group meetings. So last week was the kickoff where they gave us kind of an overview of the project. If y'all are familiar with the previous project proposals they're working on, 2C is the current schematic that they're working with. They had proposed, there were multiple throughout the years, and I think 2C is where they've landed on right now. That one does not include overhead lanes or, above ground lanes or above the lane over the river, over the lake, but it does include it towards Barton Skyway, and it includes kind of the wishbone configuration that they had talked about in the past. So that's what they're working on right now. They have submitted, or they have provided us a list of all the technical working groups. They're gonna start next week. And let me find that updated list. I know there's utilities, parkland, bike pedestrian, safety is one. Sorry, of course I can't find these right now. Air quality, water quality and quantity, cultural and historic resources, operations and safety. So basically, we'll have somebody at every one of those meetings. Our task force is aware, the MOPAC South Expansion Task Force is aware of these dates, and we'll hopefully be sending some people to join, but I'll definitely be at as many of these meetings as we can make, just to make sure that we're aware of any discussions that are happening. There's not really any deliverables, they've said, to come out of these technical working groups, but they do expect to gather all that feedback and use it as they finish completing the environmental assessment for this project. So
That's your friendly neighborhood update. Yes, ma'am.
The concern I heard about this plan is that if you want to exit or take Bee Caves Road and go Mopac North, then you have to turn right at the access road and go down to Barton Skyway, and there'll be some sort of expedited U-turn just to be able to go north. You won't be able to go under Mopac and take essentially the entranceway that's in front of the salt traders going north will no longer be operable. And so you would also turn right off of Bee Caves Road to be able to go south on Mopac. So what is now, there's a lot of traffic that traffic lines up late in the afternoon there. And I haven't actually looked at the proposal, but that was the concern I heard, was that all of the traffic from Bee Caves Road, you could still go under Bee Caves Road to get to Barton Springs, but you can't get on Mopac from Bee Caves Road. Plus, if you're coming from downtown, you would have to circle around Barton Skyway to get to Bee Caves Road, which could be problematic for our commercial customers. And so my concern hearing that is that we need to activate our task force and get them talking with our community groups and other cities, towns, neighborhood associations that would be concerned about that, to see what options or improvements might be available.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I have brought this to the attention of the Westlake Chamber of Commerce already. Not that I don't think that we know the specifics. There is a version that I am familiar with that you mentioned. I haven't seen that in the current schematic, but I share your concern.
Yeah, I think Victor Alcorta and John Hinton both attended that same technical kickoff, and that's what they understood from that.
Okay.
Yeah, they did still mention that special U-turn that they mentioned that they put in for us, but I don't.
And I think also you couldn't get there from Rolling Wood Drive. You would also have to go south to go north from Rolling Wood Drive. So
We'll definitely look closer at that.
Right, and it didn't really sound in the working groups like they were going to be considering other schematic options. It sounds like they were continuing down the path of 2C at this time to get this stuff ironed out. So I that may come up in the, I think it's operations and safety, that I'm sure it'll come up at every meeting, but I don't know that they're going to change that schematic option that they've chose during these
That's
technical
what,
working groups
that's what I
meetings.
heard, yes, and,
Mhm.
yeah, that it was not, they're gonna do the environmental study based on that, and
Mhm.
that looks like that's the deal at this point.
So
So,
That would mean that anybody coming from downtown on Bee Caves Road would also have to go north, would also have to go all the way through.
Yeah. And we've always been opposed to any sort of design like that. There is some indication that they want to try to keep the intersection separate from the South Mopac project, but I don't know how those two interplay.
which intersection?
That whole intersection you're talking about. The,
Bee Caves
going
Road
under
or-
Bee Cave Road to Mopac.
And
Okay,
Mopac.
yeah.
Mhm.
I don't know. They still have the old drawings in their archives. The 2A one doesn't look like it. Still looks like it has an exit, but
well, what's the
It's the
easiest way to
2C.
pull this
What's the
up
2C?
to look at? I
2C.
don't remember what 2C looks like offhand.
I would have to confirm. I found a previous version of 2C, but I don't know if it has changed at all from when they've had it posted in the past. When they showed it at the technical working group meeting, I'll admit it was pretty hard to see. It was a very, it was a small presentation. They didn't send back out the slides that included that, and it was hard to tell what was actually coming and going. And I thought I heard, I'm going to have to go back and confirm and see in one of these technical working group meetings that they were trying to do something with the southbound traffic coming from Mopac, that they might have an option to exit onto Bee Cave as opposed to having to also do that turnaround. So I thought that they had tried to make some kind of allowance there for a lane that came off and went to Bee Cave Road, but
So
have to confirm.
if you find
still looks like it has.
those drawings or whatever, can those get forwarded on to
Mhm.
council?
Yeah, and we'll also
Absolutely.
put them on the website. too.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Either way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll request those. They just
Thanks.
did not send those out after the meeting, so.
It looks like it. I found it. It still looks like
Amy Patillo, 3 Rockaway Cove. So, I haven't seen how they've updated any of the designs between the last time that there was an open house in 2022 to now. And so perhaps what Councilmember Brown is reporting.
I'm sorry?
Perhaps, I haven't seen that they've actually updated the designs since the last open house in 2022. My understanding is that what's online under mopacsouth.com is still the designs. So 2C is the wishbone. It has, I have never, and it has never been explained to me in the past by anyone at CTRMA or TxDOT or at any of the community meetings that we had until that last open house, that anything other than the City of Austin proposal, which is not 2C, would redirect traffic down to Barton Skyway and cut off the access point. What actually is more problematic for the city, and what most of our letters did address, is the reality that the positioning of where you could actually get on and off of the toll lanes could create a bypass to our city. And so less concerning.
I'm not sure I understand that segment.
So, from what you've just described, it's a concern that I've heard put out in the community that relates to the City of Austin's proposal, which relates to general lane traffic and where the general lane traffic would be redirected if the City of Austin's proposal was the one built. The concern that the City of Rollingwood has put in the letters in the past has focused more on the potential bypass that would be created of the city's business district and the Bee Caves Road exit because of where the toll lane exit points are and entrance points are. And so I would just say that maybe that's a place to distinguish and maybe focus on. Also, at some point in time, we actually, the box may still be here. There's a box of giant maps of all of the schematics that can be pulled out and put on tables. And that way you can really drill down and see what's happening with each of the diagrams, because I think it's really hard to tell from just looking online. Even when you zoom in, you miss, if you're on your computer screen, you miss out on being able to see the bigger picture. So just some suggestions I would have from having participated in the process in the past, and when people are coming to those drawings maybe for the first time, really trying to understand them and haven't seen the larger version of them, it might be helpful to pull those out and have the MOPAC task force come and look at the larger version, and then really track what's happening in the general purpose lanes on the wishbone configuration versus what's happening in the toll lanes. Because I've actually been really confused by the comments that I've heard in the community about what might happen with the general purpose lanes, and I'm confused as to it potentially being something that's going to happen on all of the designs. I've only seen that the City of Austin's design is the one that would redirect general purpose traffic down, and I could be wrong, but that has been my understanding the entire time that all of us that were on the council participated in this process before.
What I understood was that there was a design that was identified in this most recent kickoff meeting, and that would be the design that would go through the environmental review process. And that gave the impression that was the design, would be the final design, pending environmental concerns. But
yeah, so I can speak to that based on what I did. One other reference point maybe to give to y'all, and then also to the MOPAC task force for the city, is that CTRMA did come and speak to the Commissioners Court yesterday at their Tuesday meeting. I think it's about 2:45 into the meeting. James Bass, the executive director, and the engineer for CTRMA did a presentation on what's happening now with the technical working groups and what the purpose of the technical working groups is and who gets to make decisions about the designs. They did not indicate during that discussion that 2C is the one that's moving forward. However, I have heard that from some people who are there. But what I would maybe invite y'all to consider that was shared during that presentation, and that has been part of the technical working group process this whole time, is that CTRMA has 6 potential builds right now. And they have a technical working group that's meeting that is going to give their staff feedback on which evaluation criteria should be used to evaluate those 6 designs.
Does that 6 designs for South MOPAC, or
Right.
for the whole state, or for
For
what?
For South MOPAC, right. There's
Okay.
there's 6 alternatives basically, and that's what they're referred to. And then there's the no build as well. So there are right now, CTRMA has identified a number of evaluation criteria, and I can send you the slide, or I can read off some of them. What I understand to be the purpose of the technical working group at this point in time is for stakeholders who are invited to come and send experts to participate in those groups and to give feedback on which of the evaluation criteria are most important, and that there will be a weighting then of the evaluation criteria by the staff. And then all those 6 alternatives will be put through a formula of the evaluation criteria as weighted. And the preferred alternative will be selected then based on that ranking that's going to happen. So examples of the evaluation criteria that are right now in the packet that's available from their most recent presentation or news release about, there's a news release on the MOPAC South website about the 2045 data and how the traffic demand models have changed based on the 2045 data, which is a separate issue. But they do have a slide in there that has the current evaluation criteria as of right now. They include reducing congestion delays, optimizing corridor utilization, maximizing travel savings, serving all roadway users, provide opportunity for reliable travel times for all users, facilitate reliable emergency response, create a dependable and consistent route for transit, stakeholder input, facilitate congestion management for increasing opportunities for ped and bike, deliver relief in a timely manner, avoid and minimize impacts to water quality, be constructible without unnecessary impacts to the human environment, and provide consistency with local and regional plans. So things I noticed that are not in there are maintain access to business districts, maintain access to existing primary general purpose routes. Those could be some things that the city could look at, that the city has advocated for in the past as evaluation criteria that would be weighted heavily. It also doesn't necessarily have anything about, there is that be constructible without unnecessary impacts to the human environment. It doesn't have anything about mitigating or minimizing noise impacts to neighboring communities. So even though the wishbound configuration does push the double lanes over Bee Caves Road, they always say they're near Barton Skyway, they're actually over Bee Caves Road. That is going to introduce a new noise element into the city because of the height of where those are. I know at my house, which is a mile off of Mopac, I can hear almost every motorcycle go down Mopac because of where the echo actually comes down the lake and is bouncing off of one of the walls that was built as part of the Mopac North project, from what I can tell. I can tell you when they're when they're there. So we don't necessarily know exactly how it's going to impact the noise congestion or the noise impact to our city. And I think having heard a lot of conversation about noise concerns related to pickleball recently, that seems like something that could be an evaluation criteria that the city might want to propose is important to have weighted. So there's a number of things like that that aren't in these evaluation criteria right now that if the city is wanting to continue to engage, I think it's important to have representatives that are at these meetings proposing that these criteria be updated and that they're weighted a certain way to reflect the city's viewpoint. And also to potentially, like to Councilmember Round, to your point of reaching out to other communities, there is a list of those stakeholders who are at the technical working group. And I think it would be valuable to make sure to reach out to those entities to see if they would join, and also making sure that part of what's happening at the technical working group isn't just the staff of CTRMA leading everyone down a certain pathway, but that there's actually feedback being given during those meetings, which are extensive. There's a lot of them. If you look at the schedule, you're going to have staff people out a lot of time if they attend all of those. That they are actually collecting feedback from the stakeholders about these evaluation criteria and the weighting, so that that's what then is used to decide the preferred alternative.
So you don't think they're at the point of having decided on a plan?
I did hear, I wasn't there. I don't have a representative capacity to be at those meetings right now. So I've just heard from others who are there that there was a focus on the 2C, but I couldn't say for sure exactly how that was shared or what was shared. But I can tell you, if you go listen to the Commissioners Court meeting, which was yesterday, and I believe the technical working group meeting was Monday. So yesterday's meeting, that was the executive director presenting to the Commissioners Court and the engineer presenting, what they presented was effectively what I've just told you all, which is that the technical working group is going to be advising on the evaluation criteria. My understanding from the past is that's a weighting, like not only evaluation criteria, but how they're weighted, and that's what's going to be then applied to the alternatives to choose the preferred alternative or
And
no bill.
this was Travis County
Yes, yeah.
Commissioners Court?
Yes. And it
From
starts.
Campo?
It was the Commissioners Court,
But the presentation was
to the Commissioners Court
by Campo?
by CTRMA's.
CTRMA.
Yeah, Executive Director Bass and Caroline, I'm forgetting her last name, who's the engineer on the project. So I think it's a helpful resource. I listened to it today and I learned a lot of new things. One of the things too that is out there available for the city to review and that might be helpful for the task force to review is on the MOPAC South website. There was a news release in March that updated the travel demand modeling. And let me pull it up here. Where did it go? One thing that I really found interesting from it is that when this project first started, the model data that was used was the 2035 Campo Plan model data of what was anticipated in 20 years that the traffic would be if MOPAC wasn't built the way that they were proposing. This was back in 2013. At that point in time, we were given the data that we were given was that if there was no build by 2035, that the average travel time between Cesar Chavez and Slaughter in the morning would be 52 minutes. And one of the things that the city of Rollingwood, I think, did a really effective job at from the very beginning was challenging this travel time notion of 52 minutes. When they applied the 2045 data, which is what this project is now going to be built under most likely, the revised no build time is now 20 minutes. That's a 32-minute decrease from what was predicted when this first was proposed. And so I think one thing that maybe validates is it's really important for stakeholders to participate in these processes who actually live there and live it and can say that data doesn't make sense. And we don't think that's what's going to actually happen. You have to support it. Because we can see now, 10 years later, that they've revised the estimates of that average travel time. The same thing is now down from 52 minutes to 20 minutes. The other thing that's in that packet about the travel times is that the baseline measurement that was done in 2018 for that same distance in 2018 was a 14-minute travel time. In 2022, it was a 14-minute travel time. And so if there's no build, right now the estimate is by 2045, it would be 20 minutes. I have no doubt that it could increase. We are seeing increases in the number of people. But the worst case scenario that was presented when this first started has now been moved to maybe a less worst case scenario. So I think there's some opportunity really for stakeholders to be involved. I think that the amount that the city of Rollingwood challenged those travel times was worth it, because now we can see that they were not accurate and that it is important for the city to engage. So those would be my thoughts. Also, I noticed that you all have a special called meeting on March 22nd. If you were to put something on the agenda about this, it would allow you to get some feedback where I think there's still like 5 technical working group meetings after that time. One of them is the schematic meeting. I can pull up Ashley probably has it right there. Let's see. So it looks like May 29th, there's the Parkland Bike and Ped, which is something that the city has been really active in the past and participating in commenting on the Bike and Ped, especially as it would impact the routes that connect the city to Zilker Park and under the bridge there. There's June 5th, water quality. There's June 5th, cultural and historic resources. June 12th is the schematic technical working group. And then June 26th is the recap. So there are 2 on March 22nd, which is when y'all's meeting is, and that's the air quality one, which I would feel like would be also
Is it
great.
May 22nd?
I mean, May, thank you. Yeah, May 22nd. And then utilities is also May 22nd. And I'm not exactly sure how the utilities would be impacted, but when I was talking with Tom about it yesterday, Tom Farrell, he said, I'm a little concerned about that one because we don't exactly know. So I'm glad that Ashley will be there and can collect that information. So those are my thoughts. I think there's always more you could do to be involved. There's always less, but I just thought I would give some some framework and some additional information that may be helpful to the people who are currently working on the project.
Extremely helpful, as always. Thank you, Amy. And we do have all of those on our calendars and have told the task force, but we'll double back on certainly a few of those too, to make sure we've got some technical people there. Any other issues? We're gonna send, we'll Ashley and I were talking, we'll find the Travis County presentation and send that around to you all as well as to the task force. And kind of go from there. And we'll get those updates onto the website as well.
Yep.
With that, we'll move off of agenda item number 17 and move on to agenda item number 18. Our old friend update and on the status of the Rolling Wood trademark applications. Ms. Wayman?
This is extremely anticlimactic because I did not get a response this month. I don't know if my contact was out of the office or what, but I did not, they won't tell me.
She knows your
So-
number now.
I know,
It's
she
not-
blocked me, I think, at this point,
Yeah.
so I'll try to get another one, or get back with her as soon as she's back available, but I'm sorry, nothing this month. I'm guessing we're somewhere between under 25 and 15, so.
All right, take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
You're adjourned.